back into the EU SCC Championships. But before we jump into those, if you didn't already tell by that trailer, our brand new game, Divine Knockout, is available on most major platforms out there, whether it be PC, PlayStation, and Xbox. You can pick that up and grab yourself the Founders Pack into there, and you'll be getting yourself not just the great stuff that comes with Divine Knockout, but a cool skin over in our game, Smite, as well. I wonder what it could be, man. I'm still confused at this point, Trelly, because I've been staring at this for a while, and to me, it really just feels like this is a I was going to say there was a Jormungandr skin, bro, but is a Susano?
I thought it was Bacchus.
You thought it was Bacchus?
He's got a sword? Are you kidding me?
When did Bacchus get a sword? I don't know. But you can get yourself the Stormy Chibi Susano in Smite if you pick up the Founders Pack for DKO. Again, that's available on Epic, Steam, PlayStation, and Xbox. So if you own any of those platforms, go ahead and pick yourself up the Founders Pack. You get this skin over in Smite, as well as all the great stuff that comes with the pack itself in Divine Knockout. Very fun game, gotta say, just for the first couple of days that it's been out on release, and the times I've gotten to play test. Absolutely having a blast with the game. It's a lot of fun out there. You want to make sure to jump into there. But we're going to jump back to the EU SCC Championships now with our third match today. It's J-Mac Trelly joining me here on the desk. So we go to the Niflheim Wargs and the Styx Ferrymen.
Yeah, this should be an interesting one. We've been watching a fair bit of the SCC versus the SOC. A little one-sided because this is like the top of the SEC, but these sort of matchups, I feel, should be a little bit more interesting and more competitive for sure. So we'll be excited about that one.
Well, we'll get to take a look at the bracket for this group and at least kind of give you an idea of how things are going to go. Remember, these 8 teams are broken into 2 groups of 4. We had in Group A earlier on, Hex Mambo 2-0 Personnel. That puts Personnel down into the losers bracket. They'll be played tomorrow out onto that one. Now we jump into match 3, the second inside of this group, Styx Ferrymen, Niflheim Wargs. Winner of this match will face off against Hex Mambo, and then the loser ends up going off to face against the SOC team in Personnel. It's very similar as far as how it works over in Group B as well. We've already seen our kind of first matchup there. We'll see the second matchup after this one, Aru Scorpions and Gilded Gladiators. Winner will face the Highland Ravens. Loser faces the SOC in Thunderhead. We'll see maybe if some of these kind of lower seed SCC, because this is where we're kind of getting to now, Charlie. We saw our number 1, we saw our number 2. Now we're starting to get to the 3, the 4, and specifically this matchup, Styx Ferrymen number 4, Niflheim Wargs team number 6. So we're getting a little bit closer for those SOC teams to kind of close up that gap, maybe have a little bit more competitive matchup on their hands. But I think between this one, it gets really interesting because Charlie, if we talk about the Niflheim Wargs, the team, we'll talk about them in a little bit more there. They've had a lot of inconsistencies in their roster. For Styx Ferrymen, it's been pretty consistent for them. They've had a couple of hang-ups so far throughout the season onto here. Their team made up of StreakUp and Calvìn over in the duo lane. iceice actually going to be playing in the mid lane this time, which is a huge shakeup for this squad. FrenchEmperor actually going to be joining into the jungle there, and then BeAzrael for their solo laner on the side of Styx Ferrymen. So this should be an interesting one to see how iceice can perform in that mid role.
Yeah, I would say so. This is one of those situations that this is what we've come to expect, right? From the SCC, the EU SCC in particular, a lot of roster swaps, a lot of shakeups, especially when it's go time, especially when it's your opportunity to go to Worlds is on the line. And I think, you know, the Styx Ferrymen, a team that, if you're not at the bottom of the EU SCC, I feel as if you're able to take games off of everyone. You know, I think there's been a pretty big divide from the top and the bottom, but in this case, these matchups have always been extremely interesting. So I feel as if the Ferrymen, they made these switch-ups for a reason. I think iceice has been around long enough that the mid lane is not going to be too difficult of a switch-up for them. And I think it's as long as you're able to play through your solo, play through BeAzrael, that sort of thing, make sure that you can't let the solo of the Wargs get too far ahead, I think they'll be just fine.
Yeah, it's one of those things when you have, you know, the jungle transition to mid. You've been in that role so many times, you gank the lane so many times, you kind of get an understanding of how the role might need to be played out, or maybe at least what the enemy jungler is kind of capable of there. He's going to be, or for iceice, now going to be squaring off against Hawkk in that mid lane, Sarpeii in the jungle on the side of the Niflheim Wargs. And if I'm not mistaken, Charlie, I believe the last time that we saw FrenchEmperor kind of in this top level of play, that was all the way back when he was with his team Zenedine Zidane over in the play-ins for SPL, and then ended up making, I think, bottom seed in the SCC at that time, and then got dropped back down to the SOC. So good to see FrenchEmperor kind of make his run back up here for the squad.
Yeah, I think a very talented player as well. You know, if you're able to be that dynamic in the jungle, you should be able to set your team up quite well. I think jungle is an extremely important role, especially in these tournaments. You're looking to get active in the early, you're looking to put all of your lanes ahead, and if you can't, you know, we've seen what happens. When your jungle gets behind, it sort of leaks into every other role.
And going up against them is the Niflheim Wargs, and kind of maybe one of the more unfortunate downward trends for a team in the SCC. Niflheim Wargs have made a ton of roster changes from phase number 1 into 2, and now 2 into 3, and 3 into these qualifier matches. We have Itori moving over into the solo lane for the squad, and Hawkk will be playing here into the mid lane for this team. So, taking the mid laner away from Styx Ferrymen gives you a little bit of a boost there for the Niflheim Wargs. It is maybe the positive lights come from there. So, he knows how that team functions. He knows the kind of comms and the plans that they want to run with over there. So, maybe gives a little bit of a boost to him and his team now.
Yeah, that could be the call. Or, I guess we don't know the drama behind it. Maybe they stole, maybe he got dropped. You know, like we don't know in that case.
Who knows?
But either way, you do have a little bit of how the team likes to play in your head. So I think the Wargs could certainly use that to their advantage, as you were saying. But I think just consistent play here. When you're going into a tournament like this, you want to make sure that you're playing your own game. Playing to what the other team's trying to build up, right? I never think that's the call. If the Niflheim Wargs go into this saying, hey, we're going to wait to see how the Ferrymen play, and we're going to play reactive, it's never the best idea, especially with this much on the line. So I want to see the Wargs go in, play their own style, try and let Sarpeii get active in the early. As I just said, it's the same style of play that I want to see from FrenchEmperor, right? Go towards these junglers and see if you can get that amount of pressure.
Right. It has been a little while since you've seen FrenchEmperor again, kind of at this upper kind of mid-echelon of gameplay. It was all the way into the play-ins, jumped in for phase number 1 to kind of play for a little while there, and then phase 2 is where we kind of saw him pushed out of the SCC and into the OSOC. We'll see how his return back up here can kind of help his squad out up against the Niflheim Wargs. Should be a very fun matchup. Again, this is now the 4th and the 6th seed teams coming from here, so we no longer have that massive disparity between the 1-8, the 2-7 anymore. We're going to jump into the picks and pans for game number 1, kind of see what some of the selections end up being. Back from whenever FrenchEmperor kind of was playing during the SCC time and towards his play-ins, a lot of Nemesis was kind of on the mind of him, though Nemesis maybe not quite up to scruff as much, but we have been seeing her a lot more in the SCC. Yeah,
we did see a rise of Huang as well. I don't think that's going to be just adapting playing. I'm hoping we'll see a little bit more, but probably, you know, the typical bands more so focused on duo lane, those supports, the Ymirs, the Ymojas, that sort of thing, are still pretty deadly. And I think in either one of these teams' hands, you don't want to have that much duo lane pressure because there's a lot of farm on that duo lane side of the map that you want to try and focus out here. Daji, that makes perfect sense. One of the best junglers in the game at the moment, just for early pressure as well as that late game burst damage, as well as the Vulcan. So pretty top meta bans here. I'm not going to say too targeted. This is just things that everyone does not want to deal with, especially if you're not in that first pick slot. But that's going to reign true for just about everyone. That Thor is going to be the first pick here for the Wargs.
Yeah, making sure to get Sarpeii something powerful, something he can kind of impact multiple areas of the map there, having a little bit of semi-global presence with that one. But the Ymir, Ishtar, Daji being the first bans out by the Wargs, and the Styx Ferrymen on the opposite side, Ymoja, Cernunnos, and Vulcan. So as you said, pretty top of the meta, pretty standard bans across the board. I'm curious as to where iceice might go in the mid lane, though. Typically when you have a new mid laner, you want to get him something very safe, something he can sit back and kind of free farm up. I know that Baba Yaga has always been something kind of a namesake with the EU SCC. I wonder if we'll see him go towards something safe like that.
Yeah, I think there's also something to be said about going not safe, right? When you want your new mid laner to be comfortable, especially with the role swap, but also like you could go the Pagon strategy where you're going assassin, saying, hey, you used to play jungle, why not go something like the Tsukuyomi in the mid lane, the Susanoo, try and catch them off guard, right? Those are still viable strategies here, especially when you need to get ahead early. Starting off with a 1-game swing in a set like this could be massive here. So if that is something the Ferrymen want to go towards, I think they have that option in their back pocket as well, just trying to deal with a little bit of what iceice can do and trying to get that pressure online. But you see the Thor, so I don't think you have to grab your jungle right away. You know that the Wargs are not going to be able to grab a second jungle in that slot, in Sarpeii always so deadly on the Thor. So you know, just trying to grab the duo lane could be a certain possibility here with the Ymoja and the Ymir taken away. There are still picks like the Terra, for example. Fafnir has been pretty strong in this circuit as well. It really depends on exactly what the circuit is looking for.
Right, and with the Cernunnos band away, the Ishtar band, that kind of does leave Cupid as kind of the mainstay hunter, at least in the top 3 at this point up into here. So for that regard, you know, seeing Cupid still available for the squad means that we could be seeing that in the top 2 selection for Styx Ferrymen. Keep that one away from the Niflheim Wargs. Don't want to give them kind of too many top of the meta style of pickups there. And I kind of wonder then, Charlie, you know, with Ishtar, CERN, and then potentially Cupid being picked up, what kind of hunter selections? Because I know that Heimdall is something that's a mainstay in the EU, but it feels like Heimdall just hasn't been up to that same level as some of the other hunters as of recent.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, as long as you can build this attack speed shred build, any hunter can be played. It just really depends on flavor of the month. Because for a bit, we were saying, you know, Donza is not getting picked. There's no way anyone's playing Donza. And now Donza's popping up again.
Well,
wasn't any changes. Wasn't too
Bear
many
is
buffs.
playing Donza.
I mean, Bear was playing it. Panda Cat was playing it. My point is, as long as you're able to make use of the itemization that ADCs are going for right now, where you can go crit, you could go shred, you could go this kin size build, you could go just yellow numbers in general, I think any ADCs could be looked toward. It could just be, you know, what you're feeling confident on. So at this point, you know, Cupid, Ishtar, obviously top of the meta. Cernos also top of the meta. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some Heimdall prioritization. Or if you're just trying to get crazy, the Rama, for example, I think synergizes real well with the Silver Branch build. So I think there's a ton of options. Pretty much, there's not a single hunter that could be locked in where I'd be like, wait, really? Like, even Neith is pretty prominent over in that duo lane at this point. So nothing would surprise me.
Yeah, I think for me, one thing that I do kind of enjoy seeing is, you know, for example, we got the Tiamat that kind of came back in the last set there. For a long time, it was the Tiamat meta. Almost everybody's picking up Tiamat, and we stopped seeing her for such a long time. It's always good to see some of those gods kind of, you know, dip their toes back in every so often. Like gods like we haven't seen Raijin in forever. Wouldn't mind maybe seeing a Raijin game here and there, though I wouldn't essentially call him kind of a top pick mage at the moment. Just seeing the Tiamat kind of sprinkled back in. And it kind of gets to those points, you know, where you see a god so often, you're like, okay, finally they're gone. We don't see him 5, 6, 7 months or whatever it may be. And then you get to see him back in, and they kind of get a nice little win out there. Like, hey, I remember seeing that guy. That was a lot of fun. But jumping back into the picks and bans, it's actually a Maui top 2 here for the Styx Ferrymen. Get something that can get that range setup, that range initiation for his team in the duo.
Yeah, big fan of the Maui initiation, as well as just that auto attack wave clear, right? If you're trying to get pressure in lane, always going to be a good call. Heart Bomb into the pull, a combo we've seen time and time again, and it looks like the Styx Ferrymen are going to put a lot of value as that as well, so just grabbing their duo lane as quickly as possible. Now the Wargs have that option. Are they going to try and grab their duo lane before this next wave of bans? Because you know there are going to be some bans put towards ADCs and Guardians, that sort of thing, if they don't, and I think that is going to be the call here. So grabbing the Charybdis, just a good matchup into Cupid, some excellent safety, as well as using that auto attack build as I was talking about.
Charybdis and Fafnir, the duo lane now for the Niflheim Wargs. We assume we have seen Charybdis go towards the mid, but it seems more often kind of as a response over to this Cupid. And do you think the safety in that Whirlpool form is kind of the reason that we have been seeing this Charybdis more often? Is because Cupid is so potent with the Heart Bomb, with the Fields of Love, with how delayed the damage does come from there, you think that might be why we're seeing a little bit more Charybdis?
Yeah, I think just having safety in duo lane is so important at the moment because you don't need pressure. You don't need to get solo kills. You don't need to fight if you don't want to. You can sit underneath your tower and say, I'm not leaving until level 18. There's ways to play around that, but the point is, Charybdis, the safety she brings, is very important. So I think that's probably why the Wargs are just going towards this. They want that level of safety, and more specifically, they want to be able to leave the duo lane alone and look elsewhere for their farm, especially with a pick like Thor. I think Sarpeii can get active in mid, over in solo as well, if they have that option.
Well, Set was the final pick in the top 3 for the Styx Ferrymen to round out that one as the bans go through. Bologna, Scylla, Cabrakan, and Hades now all banned away. That leaves a Cthulhu up for Styx Ferrymen. So you've got the ranged initiation from Maui, be able to pull somebody back in, be able to reel one of those enemies in, whether it be that first ability, whether it be use that landfall ultimate to physically drag them back immediately after there. And now you throw a Cthulhu as an extra front line. Feels like this is a dangerous and devastating front squad here for Styx Ferrymen. Is there something, or do you think this, I was going to say maybe would you see a second hunter pop up, but with the Huang there, do you think this is Achilles is a good answer to maybe try and deal with some of this?
I mean, this was the age-old answer to Cthulhu back in the day, right? When it was just one Cthulhu, there wasn't the Morgan being thrown into the mix. It was just, hey, let's just get Achilles. We've got this massive target you can't miss Fatal Strike on. He's going to be in that threshold and have an easy time executing. So I think if the Wargs can get some pressure over in solo lane, yeah, it could definitely deal with the amount of pressure this Cthulhu could bring later on. But they do have the double assassin dive with the Set, with the Raven, and that's going to be annoying early game as well, right? You can tell the Styx Ferrymen are trying to diversify their early and late game, whereas the Wargs, they've got that execute. So that sentiment's a good time to look for a level 5 kill, perhaps, if just going over to lane.
Well, we'll see who comes out on top for game number 1. The number 4 Styx Ferrymen, the number 6 Niflheim Wargs. Game number 1 goes over to Dave and Myth.
That's right, these two teams back and forth during the EU SCC phase. And now wanting to set the stage for a potential run, a chance to qualify out of this EU SCC gauntlet that the teams have to go through. Remember, we got 8 teams playing here this weekend. By the end of it, only 2 teams from EU will make their way to the group stages of Worlds early in January. And so right now, eyes on Hex Mambo, eyes on Ravens, but to get a shot at either of those 2 teams, you've got to win these types of matchups, and the Wargs and the Ferrymen very, very closely matched here, Myth. And, you know, admittedly, the first thing that really jumps out to me is maybe the more unique solo lane pick that Itori has got here. Achilles has not seen a lot of play at the SPL level. Potentially an answer to this very difficult to kill Cthulhu.
And Charlie hits the nail on the head, man. This is a matchup that we used to see pretty often. The Achilles is a direct answer to Cthulhu, execute, very consistent as a tool to burn through some of these massive paragons of team fight presence that Cthulhu is when he descends into that madness. So I think as far as the actual laning phase is concerned, Itori will be just fine there. Cthulhu not exactly known for his pressure for the first 3, 4, 5 levels. And then if they so choose, the Wargs could really look to play through that solo, try and take that 2v2 to them.
French Emperor makes their way mid. Laughed a bit at the RuneScape level up sound. I heard that sound way too many times during the early 2000s, 2007 and onward. So Hawkk will be hopefully leveling up somewhat quickly throughout the laning phase here, as the junglers will 2v2 over in mid. It's the French Emperor who's got to back away a bit. Poke damage out of Hawkk and out of Sarpeii, very strong. We've talked about Huang a bit. Hadn't seen him a whole lot towards the end of phase 3 of the SPL or during phase 3 playoffs. But actually really strong Myth during this point in the lane, the first couple levels. Not a bad look. Calvin's got to be careful. Auto attacks connecting. It's a whirlpool in from Spudio, but a heart bomb from StreakUp answers out that pressure, force the Charybdis back.
Yeah, I wonder, maybe Calvin leapt in there. Just seems like probably had some answers to that situation, but gets caught out a bit. But that heart bomb, you're right, man. StreakUp, had he not connected that, very likely that Spudio was able to keep up that aggression, potentially threaten Calvin's life, but instead, Calvin able to re-sustain pretty well with all those HP pots he picked up. And even if there was a situation where the Warg's going to move in towards purple, you still have access to the Hog on this Maui, so leap over wall into Hog, or Hog into leap for a safety. Very smart answers to any bit of aggression towards the enemy buff here. So I think it's more likely that the Wargs will spend the next, I suppose, wave, this wave in particular, clearing out whatever they can in the neutral farm. Maybe a rotation towards Oracles or that left side camp. But as far as a purple buff invade, I don't think this one can work out. All you're really going to get is forcing the Hog off Calvin.
Wargs will put their pressure there and actually just take away some of the smalls and end up turning their eyes towards StreakUp. Dash away from the Cupid and a stun onto Calvin as well. It's a game of chess really over in the dual lane right now, where StreakUp and Calvin can't quite go confirm the purple on their own. They do have the Hog, as you've mentioned, but the wave has just consistently been pushed so far up. Might just have to wait for Spudio and Cozyx to back up towards their own purple buff in order to open things up there. Now, iceice has taken a bit of poke damage from Hawkk early on in this laning phase, Myth, but we know set mid with a little shove in the right direction. We have seen heavy snowballs from set mid. It's been a lot of Jade Dragon's aggressive style of play. It's a little extra weight on iceice here in the early goings.
Yeah, the shove is going to be whenever he finishes up this first item, right? Transcendence on set just really elevates this pick, stacking up some of that power, getting CDR as well. Skewer just such a strong poke tool, as well as, I mean, it almost feels like an execute at times when you've got the soldiers set up properly, when you've got the combo set up. It's just a wild bit of output. So for now, I'm not really expecting iceice to make too many waves. Once we finish that item, that's the time to get aggressive on map. Whereas Hawkk, on the other hand, yeah, we'd expect Huang to do well throughout the early. Has very strong level 1 through 4. Poke from a distance, especially with the rotations from Sarpeii early on, putting a whole lot of pressure on the French Emperor. I think it's been an expected pace for Hawkk so far. We'll see truly how it goes down in about, I don't know, a minute, maybe 2.
All right, so the 6-minute mark is what we're sending here. And if iceice doesn't get it done at 6 minutes, game's over. We're not going to see anything out of the set from that point
That's
on.
fair analysis, man. You know, it's not the one that I made, but I think it's fair.
No, I think that's spot on with what you've said, Miff. I don't think I'm putting words in your mouth by any means. Now, this is a bit of what you expect to see from Maui, especially with Cupid in lane. So we've seen what? Ymir Cupid has dominated pick bans as far as dual lane goes. Cupid's still there, but also Maui upon release has really, really risen up as far as priority goes. A little paddle over the Interceptor. That'll be your first ultimate of the game out of Calvìn. Still a scrap going on. Both teams turning their eyes towards the Scepter, and it's confirmed by the Wargs. So, decent investment there from Calvìn. Initiation now limited. And the Niflheim Wargs are even able to get the Interceptor for themselves. And watch Cozyx step forward now with a little extra aggression.
Yeah, some more damage output, some HP 5 as well. Cozyx in a very good position from here to just resustain easily. The dual lane added significant advantage to the Niflheim Wargs, who controlled every single bit of the neutral farm over there. Scepter as well as the left camp been going their way, taking the small minions on purple buff twice now as well. So it's been a slow choke out, but starting to add up as the clock ticks onward. And maybe the Styx Ferrymen relying on a rotation from FrenchEmperor or even the highly mobile set in mid to bail them out a bit in that dual lane. It's not too doom and gloom as of yet, but
20 seconds away from it being 2 minutes, by the way.
the disparity between supports, ignoring this mid lane conversation, I think really starting to stack up. Keep your eyes on that Gauntlet of Thebes. Cozyx already stacking up to about 20. Calvìn just now making it back to base to finish up his. Could be the Niflheim Wargs get the advantage on rotation out of lane.
Now, I think a worthwhile conversation to talk about overall pacing. Now speeding up a bit, Sarpeii does not get the stun with the Anvil of Dawn. So BeAzrael simply strolls through the laning phase just fine. Blue buff close to respawning, but not soon enough for FrenchEmperor to fully hang around. Would be nice. Cthulhu gets a little assistance, actually invades on the other side. Normally it's Cthulhu it's getting invaded against, but BeAzrael just fine in the laning phase so far. I think worthwhile, Miff, just prior to the dunk, I was talking about this. Overall pacing of EU SEC, it feels like the Ravens and Hex Mambo are very, very capable of heating things up and playing a very, very fast-paced game, and we saw that earlier on today. 4 through 6 in the EU SEC tend to slow things down, play a bit more safe, a bit more methodical around the objectives. And so really, you're looking at a dead even game at 7 minutes. I wouldn't be surprised if we go another 5 to 10 and we're still hanging out and farming. And it's just because it seems like teams want to ensure they can burn down the Pyro, ensure they can burn down the Gold Fury.
And I would argue if that is the pace established in this match, I'd favor Styx Ferrymen. You've got a really strong scaling dive composition with a Cthulhu to help you out in some of these team fights. Sustain, going to be very strong as well, thanks to StreakUp or even in-combat sustain from Descent into Madness. I love the Styx Ferrymen from an even team fight, if it is even at the 20-25 minute mark. I would argue the Niflheim Wargs, although not weak in the late game, have got some pretty strong points to play around right now. We talked about the ability for Sarpeii and Itori to just group up and put pressure onto BeAzrael. That's going to be the case for the next probably 10 minutes still, especially considering BeAzrael has not gone towards a defense item. Instead, Pythag's piece in first slot means you've got sustain, which gives you a little bit more HP to play with, but the burst potential is what you're concerned about.
We are going to fight again and again. Calvìn uses the ultimate, unable to get the Interceptor. And that's really been the only difference so far in this game. We haven't scrapped over many buffs. We haven't fought over many neutral objectives. The purple buff could be a difference maker here, but that one's going to get confirmed by the Styx Ferrymen. Hawkk takes a big old skewer from iceice, and Anvil of Dawn drops down onto FrenchEmperor. So does the wall! But my goodness, it did 99.9% of the damage needed. It's that last .1 that keeps FrenchEmperor alive and on the map, and that would have sparked some change here in this map. Unfortunate for Sarpeii, just a bit shy of the damage.
Yeah, I was surprised the Styx Ferrymen had actually disengaged there with Hawkk losing out on the Celestial Flight as well as the beads. I had assumed that it was just going to be a clean dive. Good game sense from the Ferrymen to realize Sarpeii was on the way. Still nearly cost you, but being able to survive, I think the FrenchEmperor had made the correct decision, especially with the build that he's elected to go for. I gotta assume it's Transcendence in second slot. I just gotta assume. Heartseeker second slot, just not exactly standard, but if you were gonna go Transcendence, wouldn't you have rather had it a little bit earlier on to stack up? We'll have to see what French Emperor decides on here. Maybe just wanted that Jotuns to make sure there was some sort of fight back potential had Sarpeii gotten aggressive early. But on the topic of builds, Dave, I don't know if you noticed, Itori with Golden Blade in first slot? That's not, you know, out of the realm of common for soul laners, but maybe not what I would have expected for an Achilles. I mean, we haven't seen Achilles in a while, but feels like Glad Shield probably gets a little bit more value, allows you to stick a little bit more aggressively to Azrael. Instead, it's been a surprising pace. Azrael's legitimately bullying Itori in the soul lane, and that is not what you expect from a Cthulhu at all.
Not at all. But Azrael a 1-level lead. Remember, I had considered a potential blue buff invade from the Styx Ferrymen a few minutes ago, which is not something you often see with a Cthulhu lane, but stroll around, drop a ward, grab some vision on Sarpeii. And Sarpeii has been very active with this Thor so far. We saw the near kill on the dunk in mid. And has not shied away from using Anvil of Dawn even just a couple minutes off of cooldown. Just a great pace that ends up getting set. I believe I'm not sure French Emperor went back. Maybe just goes and gets the speed, but haven't seen that build change in quite some time. So immediately on map right now, Sarpeii in a very, very strong spot. Brawler's Beat Stick and the Jotuns. Be nice to fight around him. Double tick. Takes away a little damage from French Emperor. But luckily for the Styx Ferrymen, avoid, well, for now, the onslaught of Thor damage. Does he have the leg? He does. That's a stun on a French Emperor, and this time the damage is there. The item upgrades makes the difference, and a very, very heads-up play from Sarpeii snags first blood.
Yeah, Sarpei's had eyes for French Emperor all game, and finally is paid off for it. That is a very stifling combo from Thor. You've got a lot of ways to immune it as Ravana. If you're playing heads up, you can reaction ultimate to avoid the dunk. You can reaction overhead kick to avoid the dunk. Didn't see either. Instead, just falls down immediately to the CC chain. I'm thinking Styx Ferrymen's jungler probably not going to let that one happen again. Happens once, shame on me. We'll figure it out. Happens twice, well, things are getting a bit iffy.
It's been tough for French Emperor. Still sitting on that tier 2 Morningstar, just has not been able to upgrade to the third item, whereas Sarpeii has now gone beyond the tier 1 of the next item. Fighting around Sarpeii in mid. That's nice damage from iceice. It's fully stacked the Transcendence, gotten Jotun, so the set in a decently strong spot. Force the ultimate out of Hawkk, but the iceice ult also down as well. Calvìn caught a bit behind the wall, but no big commitment from the Niflheim Wargs. Happy with the pace that's been set so far. About a 1,000 gold lead just on the back end of Sarpeii, picking up that early kill. Some shred damage here, Miff. I mean, Pyro's up, Gold Fury's up, but again, if the team's cautious to throw out ganks and 3v3 and fight in mid and fight in duo, I think they're waiting for a guaranteed early objective before making the big pull. It'd be a nice win, though. Again, these small separations with these EU SEC teams usually make the difference, and that's a successful purple buff invade for the Wargs.
Yeah, generally it's around that 18-minute mark where we see Gold Fury first grouped up on. It's almost a direct parallel to what we've seen in the SPL. French Emperor getting active.
Yeah, he can. What if he's going to up down? He's got
no way
assistance from Cozyx and a rotation out of solo lane from Itori, but Sarpeii will hammer out and away. The Achilles will not get to use the Fatal Strike, not just yet. And a bit of disengage from Calvìn as well. Secures the escape of the Styx Ferrymen. I wonder if that stun ends up connecting. It looks a bit different there for the Niflheim Wargs, but the gumption of Sarpeii to go back in despite half HP really tells you a bit about how this Thor is feeling.
Yeah, if he connects the dunk on a French Emperor, that's just French Emperor's life. Similar situation for Cozyx here, who is showing off just how tanky he really is. iceice forces the Aegis, dueling dragons off the mark. So iceice will be able to walk himself out of there. Maybe French Emperor can rotate through, make the difference. Not the case with Sarpeii acting as goaltender. The point I was trying to make before that small skirmish in mid was generally it's around that 18-minute mark where we see these SEC teams group up around Gold Fury. They love to make the play then. Faster pace, though. It's the Wargs grouped up first, 14 minutes in.
You got a Fafnir, you got an AoE Coerce, you've got Spudio, who's in a strong spot, that Calvìn here. Calvin has been unsuccessful on stealing objectives so far, and it won't start now. The Wargs get the Gold Fury. And it's iceice rotating out of mid this set. Desperate to get involved. We just haven't seen it. Cozyx, though, shoved back. Itori with the first, but BeAzrael on a rotation in from solo has tilted the scales right on back. It's Spudio left alone. The Maw needed for CC immunity. StreakUp around the corner. Stun! Doesn't end up getting set. And here's a dunk back in from Sarpeii. The second win from the Wargs is coming in strong. But the French Emperor still with some leg in this fight. It'll end up being a third kill for the Wargs and a disengage from the Ferrymen.
Tori's got the chase. Second dash is there.
Does
Fatal strike still available. Execute could be good.
Can he chain them together, though? Can you get French Emperor down and low enough? No, Execute won't connect, but that's big damage. He's tanky enough. He'll run down the French Emperor. There's your big game swing, Miff. It's a Gold Fury +4 for the Niflheim Wargs and a 3,000 massive gold spike here in game 1.
Sarpeii on the retreat. iceice has already used his gap close, so that should just spell the end of that small trade. Another win. I believe Sarpeii able to steal away that speed.
He did, yep.
iceice still on the hunt. Cozyx acting as goaltender here.
That was a nice fight from the
Will
Thor.
be prevented. Yeah, I loved what we'd seen from Sarpeii. The dunk in to finish off the kill, the chase out, the wall onto Calvin in particular to separate that fight. Calvin stuck against a literal rock of his own spawn, that Maui island, and then another tectonic rock that Thor had knocked out of the Earth's crust. Just makes it so difficult to maneuver the map in situations like that. Double hammer connects, and from there, able to chase out with relative ease. The rotation of the soul laners has seen Itori a bit more successful, 2-0-2 on this Achilles. And it's that Glad Shield, I think, is the real difference maker, man. The additional CDR, a little bit more power, some survivability, really allowed him to stick into that backline and stay there. Whereas Azrael's gone for a slightly squishier build than is average for Cthulhu. Doesn't feel like we see Breastplate of Valor too often. Generally, it's that Heart Ward in second slot. Pythax piece standard, but certainly not a defensive item. Kind of allowed the Wargs to just return damage.
Oh my god, the circle of lightning on the ground tells you that Sarpeii is in.
Good lord.
And he's fighting. French Emperor drops for the third time this game.
Yeah, turn on him.
Sarpeii, right. I was wondering if we'd see the Thor go back. It's iceice really against 3 right now, but BeAzrael on an early rotation out of solo tilts the scales back just a bit. Spudio also with the big lead, 3 levels for Spudio over StreakUp. So the dual lane for the Wargs has also looked very clean. Itori, there's a chaining of abilities and a fatal strike that connects. Unfortunately for the Ferrymen, this pace has now just gotten out of control. And this is when we talk about junglers that can force fights. Sarpeii has just been doing it with Anvil of Dawn. French Emperor completed, but only has 20 stacks on the Transcendence. Just been a jungler really setting the pace and a jungler trying to pick up the pace. Really a story of 2 sides.
Yeah, Sarpeii has been camping French Emperor. It's not easy for French Emperor to say, all right, well, Sarpeii is outpacing me on map. Maybe I'll just play for the counter gang. Can't do it. Styx Ferrymen can steal the Pyromancer, though. Whether or not they make it out alive. And I'm talking about the Wargs. It's to be seen.
That's right. The Wargs, somewhat low on HP, and a 3-man knockup from BeAzrael. Disengage is the best you can hope for, really, at this point in the game. Is a Pyromancer steal and a small win for the Styx Ferrymen. Maybe hoping in a scenario like that, Myth, that the Wargs can confirm it and do a bit better around the objective given their lead.
Yeah, you'd really expect the Wargs to be able to handle it there, but a nice steal, still nice from the Styx Ferrymen. I love what BeAzrael was willing to do, stepping up aggressively. Not an easy decision to make. I mean, that was essentially a 1 versus 4 where if you don't steal it, it's pretty likely that you lose your life on the tail end. Instead, takes away the Pyro, walks himself out of there very easily. So massive play just to keep the Styx Ferrymen head barely above that water. And I mean barely, because the gold lead is still massive in favor of the Wargs. We're about a minute out from the Primal Fury respawning. Imagine that's where we see both these teams group up next. And the Wargs should still likely be playing aggressive around it. They've got the crit chance from Spudio a bit, so your objective burn's still pretty strong. You've got
4 levels ahead.
Best confirmation on map as well. Yeah, 4-level lead for the Charybdis.
And the
Stifling. Yeah, no, that's less than ideal. But yeah, play aggressive, Wargs. You've got the lead everywhere.
Yeah, your initiation is super far ahead, and then also your backline that's following up the initiation, super far ahead. Feels like a win-win scenario for the Niflheim Wargs, and you'll see a slight hovering over towards the left side. Now, teleport by Itori just gets used. maybe the best he can do here if he's not going to rotate over, which it looks like he is. The Achilles will make his way left. I was wondering if he might just pull some Styx Ferrymen over towards the right side of the map, but no. Or yes, just hovering close to see where the Styx Ferrymen end up rotating out. It's a hook on the Cozyx, because there's no real commitment just yet from the Wargs on the Fury, and actually it's a back and purchase maybe from Sarpeii. Would like to finish that Titan's Bane prior to this next fight, and he's got it. It's a ridiculous power spike out of the jungle. Feels like the Warg can do no wrong. You got to ensure that you pick up the objective. You don't want to open the door by allowing the Styx Ferrymen to steal away another one of these objectives. So be sure that you're going to get it, or just turn and fight once the Styx Ferrymen step up.
Styx Ferrymen are certainly here for the defense. Azrael actually teleports in a bit earlier. I thought maybe the Ferrymen would play aggressive. We're overly concerned, I think, with the Warg's ability to pull that objective. Had Azrael just walked to this fight, would have had access to essentially 2 lives. Could have just TP'd back in after the poke. Instead, no access to the TP means first fight has to go well.
It's either a fight that tilts the game back, and it's stolen again. The Styx Ferrymen with a bit more wind in their sails, as now it's a dueling dragons used by Hawkk to try to keep this fight going, and the fight after the fact does not look good for Styx Ferrymen. Again, it's best case scenario, you steal away the objective, but if you stick around, your team is not going to win the fight. You're simply too far behind. What can the Wargs now do on the other end? Are they going to head over to the Fire Giant? They've got 30 seconds without both carries.
Pull the fire, force the Styx Ferrymen in again. Their best steal, I suppose, is maybe an ultimate from TheFrenchEmperor, but you got to get in range for that. Fire Giant already burning quickly. Azrael first on the scene.
3v5 and you're behind. You need a miracle here if you're the Styx Ferrymen. Gonna lose Calvìn in all likelihood. He doesn't die, but he's out of the fight. As Azrael's been left alone with 3, goes big. Calvìn does end up dying. Azrael will as well. Now this Fire Giant made much more simple. A fatal strike from Itori will miss, but a double kill drops nonetheless. Back to the FG, and everyone from the Ferrymen dies.
Yeah, no problem, say the Niflheim Wargs. You can have the Gold Fury. It's a consolation prize anyway. Fire Giant belongs to the Order side team. All 5 members benefiting from that buff. The Styx Ferrymen didn't necessarily need to die for that Gold Fury. It was just Calvìn. Walks up with the ultimate, landfall, takes the objective, and then I believe it was a 2-man pick immediately afterward. Calvìn dies there every time by dedicating his body to get in a range to steal it away. But he should have been the only one, and because there were multiple casualties, the Niflheim Wargs were able to rotate over towards that Fire Giant with relative ease, take the team fight as well. Styx Ferrymen base defense, not exactly strong either. You don't have a standard mage. Cupid is massively behind in build, at least. Experience not as much as it once was. You can only hit level 20 once. Spudio's been there for a good while. And then TheFrenchEmperor is not exactly tanky either, so your space creation tools aren't exactly strong. Calvìn, maybe one of the best tools on defense, barring Azrael, is the ability to landfall, pull someone out of position, but I'm thinking the Niflheim Wargs are just going to work their way through the map pretty easily here, thanks to Spudio on this Charybdis, the Coerce, the Fire Giant, having some mage displacement as well with the dueling dragons. If anyone steps out of line, you've got non-committal initiation. I love the Wargs' odds here.
Fortunately for the Ferrymen, I think the cautiousness on the F6 may have a bit more than what we got here this morning, and maybe still some footing in this game. A 9,000 gold lead, somehow closer than what we got. A nice pull in onto Spudio, but that's Charybdis we're talking about. She'll drop down into the whirlpool, and Spudio will disengage, but a hook from Calvìn onto Itori. This is a great first target. Then StreakUp with a big shutdown onto Itori. It's the closest fight we've gotten so far from the Styx Ferrymen, but a transformation from Cozyx tells you that the Wargs want to fight. It's because Sarpeii has dropped in a double kill from the Thor, and call it 7-0-6 in a left side Phoenix.
Man, Itori tried so hard to hold on a fatal strike there. He gets hit by the Fields of Love, thinking, all right, that's fine. Get hit by a multi-man knockup by Azrael, okay. You get the skewer as well, the slow is pretty strong. Don't worry about it. The pull in from Calvìn, that was the straw that broke the camel's back, but it was also too little too late on the fatal strike. So Itori trades out his life, but at least drags the Styx Ferrymen out of position so that Sarpeii could knock him down.
It's the old bait death, right? Dies, but pulls in the Styx Ferrymen. I'm sure you'd rather be alive, but If that's what it takes to get the other team out of position, I'm sure Itori just fine with it. So the Fire Giant still with a bit of time left, but it looks like the Niflheim Wargs not wanting to force the issue too heavily. Go back, get Pyromancer, spend up some of that hard-earned gold. Really turnaround potential in this game, Miff, is somewhat low, maybe, for the Styx Ferrymen. You're hoping for a catch-out, just a pick onto the level 20, 504 Achilles wasn't enough. Need big mistakes from the Wargs.
Yeah, we're about 2 minutes away from Fire Giant respawn, and
Are you fighting for it?
I think you have to. Your base defense didn't look so good, right? I mean, that was a miracle situation. Itori ate every bit of CC on the map, and then maybe even a little bit from Sarpeii as well, right? Like that wall, not exactly perfect. So whether or not you're gonna be able to do that again, I think pretty unlikely. Fighting the Fire Giant pit, you've had a great track record on objective steals.
That's true.
I'll roll my dice there every time.
That's true. Stolen a Pyro, stolen a Primal Fury. One from BeAzrael, one from Calvìn.
You got 3 other members that need to step up here.
That's right, they got an opportunity. Gold Fury, not necessarily needed by the Wargs here, but some last-minute items might get finished up prior to the next Fire Giant spawning. That could help out. Really ideal scenario for the Wargs where, outside of the Gold Fury being the spawn, you get left and mid Phoenix down. You got Fire Minions pushing down the left side of the map. And that'll force the Ferrymen potentially over there to defend. Now, this is an important time to have teleport on BeAzrael, so you can push out some of those minions, buy yourself a bit of time, and then teleport into the fight if needed.
Well, I've got some bad news.
All right, hit me.
He hasn't upgraded that teleport.
He's got no towers to do.
He's got no time. I mean, you could teleport to some wards if he would upgrade it. Hasn't done so just yet, so.
All right, so forget that.
My man could get to that right side Phoenix, right? Like, so you send BeAzrael over to the left, he TPs to the Phoenix, spends 10 seconds walking to the Fire
Do you
Giant,
think it would
he's
just
there.
be faster to walk there? No, that probably
Not from
saves you.
left.
That probably saves you what? 4 or
5
5 seconds?
5, 6,
Which
7.
is a long time in Smite.
Yeah, it's a long time in general.
5 seconds of just, that was a lot of silence. Oh, goodness. Oh, that felt like an eternity, you're right. And I'm not even sure that was a full 5 seconds.
That's right.
It felt like too long. All right, so a teleport from left to right could be it for BeAzrael. The Fire Giant pull, it's not going to be enhanced, and I doubt the Wargs want to stick around for 3 more minutes and wait for this one to turn over, especially when you can just end the game on 1 more push. It's full build from Sarpeii. A Heartseeker will finish it off and might just grab a couple of extra kills here. Wall out and one of the 2 hammer swings. Good enough. Sarpeii will go up. This is BeAzrael. He's transformed, but
Look
the
at
team
iceice.
on a different page. iceice in the back line is drawn the Anvil of Dawn over, but hasn't finished off any kills. But initiation limited. Sarpeii finds a kill anyway. Stun onto Calvìn and a swing away. Fields of Love pretty good here from StreakUp. Maybe a life raft for the other 4 remaining members of the Styx Ferrymen.
Styx Ferrymen have to play defensively here. iceice showing some presence, but Hawkk is spotting him out. Itori got 2 on his own, and BeAzrael showed up in mid. This all creates space and time for Fire Giant to be pulled. Or maybe just to close it out, man. Sarpeii grabs iceice.
Yeah, Sarpeii with another. Itori is on an onslaught. Aegis used by StreakUp. And it's enough to keep the Fatal Strike at bay. Looks like Spudio stuck around on his own, finished off that Fire Giant. Left side Phoenix respawns, and it's defended by BeAzrael. And mid is going to respawn here shortly. You don't have iceice, you don't have TheFrenchEmperor for 30 and 10 seconds respectively. Should be quick work here for Sarpeii.
Sarpeii might be able to double tap left Phoenix even with backdoor protections. Mid Phoenix won't have him with that Fire Minion wave in, so like a single auto maybe knocks that one out. But all he has to do is distract a couple members while the rest of his team takes out the right side bird. Right Phoenix falls, mid Phoenix still pushed up, Sarpeii here, and the Niflheim Wargs folding in.
Sarpeii's been able to sustain up quite nicely. Mid lane Phoenix drops, and now it's 1 auto attack or 2 from someone. The Wargs will get all 3 Phoenixes down. Unfortunately,
That's a lot.
yeah, more auto attacks than you were
5.
expecting. Yeah, my goodness. 5 seconds, 5 auto attacks.
5 members alive.
5
on
members
both teams.
alive. Half HP on 50% HP on the Titan. And 2 pulled back in by Calvìn. It's the best initiation we've seen from the Styx Ferrymen so far this game. iceice just hasn't been able to finish off the backline dives. That's not going to change here. As Sarpeii will finish this game likely at 10-0. This has been a masterclass of Thor play, and it's given the Wargs all but a victory here in game one. A shutdown from StreakUp, and a resurgence from the Styx Ferrymen, but the damage just hasn't connected onto the Titan. Not enough, not just yet. Calvin still in it. Cozyx jumps.
Hold on, they got it.
Onto the big one. Itori needs a bit more, and he's got it. And that'll be game one to the Niflheim Wargs.
The Wargs spent a little bit of time trying to, pad the KDA a little bit towards the end there, but eventually decided, wait, hold on, guys. We're dying out. We got to take that Titan with us, and we're able to turn it around. I think Odysseus Bow doing the majority of the DPS there, or consequential damage, but still took out the Titan nonetheless. Clean play. When it's really slow pace throughout the early, that first team fight starts to gain more and more weight as the more time builds up with not much happening on the map. First team fight went to the Wargs, and the rest of the game followed suit.
Looked fantastic, the jungle did for the Niflheim Wargs there. Adjustments, though. Look, these are two very closely knit teams. This is the type of game where the Ferrymen can make some adjustments, change up their draft a little bit, and maybe push us on to our first game 3 of the weekend. We'll see what happens in game 2 between the Ferrymen and the Wargs coming up next.
Niflheim Wargs, who have been struggling a bit during the regular season of play, have had themselves a nice little turnaround here to start off this set for our third set in the EU SCC Championships by able to find a win over the Styx Ferrymen. And Charlie, a lot of that game felt like, at least for the Styx Ferrymen, they had shining moments. They wanted to get those points where they wanted to get those fights in, but they were running a couple too many people in. They were able to steal a couple of objectives away, and that's a really good look for Styx Ferrymen. Problem is, it felt like they were throwing too many lambs out there after each of them won.
Yeah, and it also felt like they did not have many answers for Sarpeii on this Thor, right? That Thor was absolutely popping off. When you look at a Phoenix Siege and you look up into the sky and see a 10-0 Thor, that's never a good look, right? You know someone is getting one shot, even through relics. I also think that, you know, while iceice and French Emperor, the double assassin dive was decent, they weren't able to confirm these kills. I think if they had a little bit more levels, maybe itemization changes as well, they would have been able to have a little bit more of that die that they so desperately needed, but they just weren't able to get online, right? And I think, as I said before this game even started, it's going to be Battle of the Junglers, and since Sarpeii was overwhelmingly winning that battle, the farm just kept going to the side of the Niflheim Wargs, so you could tell about 5,000 gold at that point, and it just kept growing, even up to this early fire giant pull from the Niflheim Wargs.
Yeah, unfortunately, this early game, Ravana never really got too far going for French Emperor. iceice wasn't able to get too much going on with that set mid either. It seemed that Hawkk was just too safe on this Huang for the set to really deal with out there, despite the amount of damage that iceice was able to put out. I mean, once you get towards this late game, 3-4 items in, Skewer does a lot, but unfortunately, that does a lot more when Sarpei's 8-0 at that point and is able to just essentially two-tap anybody.
It's so funny, though, because he's like the little chibi skin, so the hammer's so small, but it's doing so much damage. Like
the head is so
when
big.
Chibi Thor gets fed, I can see why iceice thought he could win that trade. You know, he's like, oh, that hammer's not very big. Oh, it took 700 damage. Okay, that makes a little more sense. So maybe focusing out the Thor could be a call here from if you're looking at the Ferrymen and they're saying, hey, we don't want to let them first pick Thor against Sarpeii. Absolutely popped off. Try and grab it for yourself. That could be the call as well. But giving Sarpeii back the Thor, I imagine, is not on the Ferrymen's to-do list here for today.
No, on their priority list, that's at the top of not giving the Thor back to the enemy team there. Maybe as we jump into picks and bans for game number 2, we will get to see if that Thor makes it through this time. Maybe gets picked up by Styx Ferrymen, or do they just ban it away entirely, not let Sarpeii have that pick again, not allow the Niflheim Wargs jungler to go off on the tear that he did, I believe, 10-0 and 6 to close that game out for the Thor. Niflheim Wargs second pick this time around, so Styx Ferrymen do have the opportunity to take the Thor for themselves in this first pick selection. That's where it was prioritized last time for the Wargs. We'll see if it goes the same way this time, Charlie.
He was 10-1, J-Mac. They did
Oh,
kill
my
him
bad, 10-1.
During the Titan siege,
Right,
he did die. So they figured out how to stop the Thor. Make sure that they try to end, and then they mess up ending. That's if that's your answer for the Thor, yeah, maybe trying to prioritize grabbing it or taking it away. In this case, since the Styx Ferrymen are in first pick rather, they should be able to first pick it, which then puts, you know, the threat on the Wargs. Are you going to let that pick through, or are you not too afraid of letting the Thor pick in that slot? But they answered it for me. They are afraid, and they are going to take away that Thor, as well as the Ymir, focusing on that duo lane specifically, as well as just that semi-global presence that Angel of Dawn brings. And I think that was probably the correct choice.
Taking some of the player-made walls off the map, too. I mean,
Yeah.
not just the geometry of the map itself, but being able to remove a couple of gods that are really good, and even if you throw the emoji into that same conversation, taking away all of these extra obstacles that maybe you weren't taking into account, maybe you remove some of the necessity for things like a Phantom Shell, and kind of just open up the door a little bit more so.
Ishtar.
But Fafnir, the final god banned by Styx Ferrymen. Niflheim Wargs take away the dodgy. No surprise thing, as that is still one of the top assassins out into the game. And it opens up now for probably the top hunter in the game to be first picked, Ishtar to Styx Ferrymen.
What will the return be? The second top hunter. I mean, when CERN is banned, of course. In this case, Ishtar, and then Cupid is usually the answer back. I think both have decent matchups. It doesn't have to be grabbed here, because again, the Styx Ferrymen already grabbed their hunter, so no fear of them taking it away unless they want a double hunter composition, which still is extremely prevalent. Despite the fact that Fafnir is taken off the table, could be the call, and it looks like the Wargs did fear that a little bit, and they're going to go ahead and grab that Cupid as well as the Xing Chen. Usually the Xing Chen has been flexing over to solo, but it still has that same amount of potency in the duo lane. Still extremely unkillable, decent wave pressure. I'm going to hold on to the ambiguity of the pick, but there's a conversation to be had for both roles.
Yeah, I was actually going to bring that up to you if it came back over without it, but you already kind of covered the basics
I'm on
there.
point today.
Well, instead, we know the Hades, that one's going to be going over into the solo lane. Bacchus making a showing here over for the EU SCC. Going to be going over into the dual lane. At the beginning of the season, this is something that we saw a lot of, and there are a couple of individual kind of players that do still like to go to the Bacchus just whenever it may be so. But kind of, how do you feel about Bacchus right now with this current meta of supports?
I absolutely love Bacchus. I think that just the amount, having 2 CC abilities at level 2 is pretty nuts as is, especially in dual lane. If you can get an Indra Scepter onto that Bacchus, you're looking at level 5, going over to find a carry and saying, hey, I'm going to 1v1 you because I have that amount of protections built into the kit. Magical damage, especially if you're putting points into Chug, or at least 1 point in that case. And then just Intoxicate is just a great burst ability. So I'm a big fan of the Bacchus. Not the greatest time into Xing Chen, probably going to force a beads or at least holding on to that leap whenever you're nearby. You don't want to be getting Whirlwind of Rage and sealed into a Pillar of Agony. There's a lot of different, combos that can come through with that. So I think just looking out for your beads in that situation, or just sprinting away, because there's a Cupid on the other side as well. There's a lot of abilities here that a Bacchus doesn't love to deal with, but the pressure in duo lane is what I pick Bacchus for, and I'm a big fan.
So Scylla for the Niflheim Wargs before the bans do go through, and those bans end up being Charybdis, Ratatoskr, Naja, and Osiris. Opens up Achilles for the Niflheim Wargs to bring themselves once again. So now we don't really have to worry about or question where the Xing Chen may be going, as the Achilles was the pick for Itori last time around. Seems that he's more than willing to run that one back, even kind of without the need of there being a Cthulhu, this massive body that you would kind of want to have that execute with. Seems they just want to get something that can at least maybe match some of that pressure that Hades can put in solo.
Yeah, this could be a sneaky counter to Hades, to be honest, because I think as of recent, the build has been big shields, and one thing that executes don't care about is shields. So if Hades does drop below that threshold and then gets this big shielding, Achilles says, hey, I'm just going to execute you anyways. And it's not like Hades builds Aegis. No one builds Aegis anymore. It's blink beads or teleport blink or teleport beads. You're not getting Aegis in solo lane. So maybe a switch up there, or at the very least pressuring out that Hades to make sure you can't channel Pillars of Agony for that entire time. Looks like the Styx Ferrymen are going for a bit of a knock-up composition here with the Awilix in the back. There are a few leaps that they're able to pull here. The Scylla and the Xing Chen come to mind, so I think the Awilix will be able to get a fair bit of value. On the flip side, though, that Lancelot, he's not going to care too much about the Awilix. I think we'll be just fine trying to find some early brawls in the jungle. And that's what I look towards with Lancelot, right? Trying to fight early, using that horse to say, hey, I've got more abilities than just about everyone else in the jungle at the moment, so I'm down to brawl.
Yeah, maybe so long as this Lancelot doesn't have to deal with the initial knockout. Remember, on top of that horse, does have a lot of that CC immunity. We'll see if the Styx Ferrymen can bring this one back and take us to a game 3, or are we going to have another 2-0 for the Niflheim Wargs this time around? And to do that, we got to jump in to game number 2.
That's right. Remember when we talk about making adjustments, and we ended the cast with this just a moment ago, Miff, when the teams are closer knit, like the Ferrymen and the Wargs are, closer in skill, you can make some compositional adjustments that might make a difference in some of the games here. And Styx Ferrymen have one big mindset. They want to jump in with Calvìn. They want to see if TheFrenchEmperor can find some pulls back. Let's see what iceice can get done on this Huang. The set never quite completed any of those dives. Lots of blinks, lots of aggressions from the Styx Ferrymen.
Yeah, and TheFrenchEmperor on this Awilix, I think, going to be a great topic of conversation going forward. Levels 1 through 3, you're not exactly in the greatest position. Awilix can catch you off guard for sure. Her damage output decent in the early, but really relying on that knockup. Once you get to like level 6 on Awilix, like you get a 3 points in the feather step, she kind of starts moving a little different.
Yep.
All right, Dave? The damage output is ridiculous at that portion of the game. You gain access to Gravity Surge as well, so some of the safety that Hawk's going to be relying on, or Cozyx, a bit susceptible to reinitiation from that ultimate. So I think TheFrenchEmperor, one that I'm going to keep my eyes on throughout the levels 5 through like 9. Otherwise, Lancelot, Sarpeii, super impressive game 1 from him on the Thor. Lancelot, hyper aggressive at just about every single portion of the game, might be able to establish pace once more.
The Lancelot, one of the SPL favorite junglers, won a lot of games this past weekend. Camelot Kings, champions of Phase 3. Looked really good on the Lancelot when it was Captain Twig who was playing it. Level 2 hit here for Calvìn. A little more poke damage from StreakUp. And so the Bacchus myth, I think you got to talk about it. It's something that, Des talked about it a bit. You imagine Trix tank plays here in the EU SEC. Neoma maybe every once in a while at the SPL level. Maybe good to get some aggression early in the game, but also hyper tanky if the game goes long.
The tankiest Guardian in the game when he's 6-slotted.
Yeah.
Chug just so good for those protections, the initiation factor, even the damage output from Bacchus, deceptive. in the latest portions of the game as well. Intoxicate's such a great team fight tool. I'm a massive fan of this pick. The weakness being, like after like level 5, you're not bringing as much as consistently as the rest of the Guardian pool, who are a bit easier to execute on. Where Cozyx can blink, Whirlwind of Rage Steel, leap out. Level 5, Calvin's got to stick in there if he wants to really have his impact known.
Right. Sticking around, the Wargs will have an opportunity to maybe grab a kill or two over on the dual lane of the Styx Ferrymen. Now, solo lane should be an interesting matchup. Itori is going to run back the Achilles. Looks like Golden Blades start yet again. That'll help out clearing things early. Invade from Calvin. Stuns exchanged. Spudio will pick up the purple buff just fine. Achilles v Hades in the solo lane, Myth. Not a matchup I was expecting to talk about here this weekend. But Hades certainly very strong at the SPL level. It looks like BeAzrael wants to flex those muscles a bit here in game 2.
Yeah, I don't think there's a single matchup in solo that Hades just loses.
Sure.
He's got so much sustain. The scaling is so good as well. Hawkk just taken off the map. So I was talking about earlier. You find the knock-up, and Awilix is pretty good in the early game, and Hawkk losing the beads there as well could be back-breaking. FrenchEmperor going to tick over to level 5 very shortly. Could just catch Hawkk off guard, drag him in one more time with that gravity surge. Itori, though.
Oh, no!
Yeah, I mean, it is bad to worse here.
Everything's going wrong for the Niflheim Wargs. Now at the 3 or so minute mark, BeAzrael dashes forward. This could be a chance for Sarpeii, but also a chance for FrenchEmperor. Itori still has Fatal Strike. FrenchEmperor apparently simply just has more damage right now than Sarpeii did. Won that trade, but a gallop away from Sarpeii ends things where they are. Now, to your point, Myth, maybe that's expected early on here from the Hades, but BeAzrael has not had to go back to lane yet. It's Tainted Steel, still tier 1. Book, still tier 1. Has Blink. Itori has already had to use Teleport and is sitting in lane with no pots and half HP. Iceice under some pressure. Dueling dragons there, but this is a Huang we're talking about. Will flutter away to safety.
Yeah, not much that you could do about that, except for initiating with ultimate to prevent the Celestial Flight. FrenchEmperor tries to find Hawkk. Not quite able to get that knockup for himself, but even just closing gap. Could have done it. That is a real tough situation. Has to spend time dismounting. Gravity Surge attempted on that dash. A wild dash out by Hawkk, who's maybe just realizing that being on Suku would make it a bit too difficult to pull him back in. Massive opportunity lost. Hawkk is essentially, in just baiting that ultimate out from FrenchEmperor, secured his safety for the next minute, which should get him back to beads.
Last couple matchups of the day, really the ones that we expected to be the difference makers, kind of middle of the table here in the EU SEC. The ones you're wondering if can challenge Hex Mamba, wondering if they can challenge the Highland Ravens, or if it's just going to be a runaway from the number 1 and number 2 EU SEC teams. I think if you're the Ferrymen, after a game 1 domination by the Wargs, this is the exact start you needed in game 2. Not only just to get through and eventually play one of Hex Mambo or the Ravens, just to restabilize yourself after a game 1 loss.
Dave, I wanna look forward a little bit. Looks to me like FrenchEmperor is gonna be going for a Hydra's, but you had told me in the past that you've got explicit thoughts about the tier 1 of this item. Could you go into depth for that for maybe viewers that weren't around?
The tier 1?
Yeah.
No, it's the tier 2 Hydras.
Oh, okay. So we gotta wait a little bit.
We gotta wait a second.
God, hope he doesn't finish it in one bag.
Well, might if he's able to keep pressure going. No, you remember the tier 2 v tier 3. Because tier 2 Hydras is a weak little fork-looking thing.
Yeah, like a spork even.
Right, we'll get there if FrenchEmperor doesn't get the full buy. But if Awilix starts to string some kills together, it may end up being a full buy for FrenchEmperor. Look at this. Commitment in from BeAzrael as well, but also from Cozyx. Blinks exchanged. It's FrenchEmperor who's sent back. Had the beads, but was able to get out of the Whirlwind of Rage and Steel. Sarpeii dashes forward. Calvin able to jump away, but Cozyx on the chase. It's a support battle in the back line, and it's one that Cozyx has dropped. Pillar of Agony down from BeAzrael. This is a strange fight. Teams have disengaged and different territories here. Sarpeii!
Hit your shots! Hit your shots! Okay.
One more auto is in. Iceice does hit one of the final shots. The Niflheim Wargs, though, a 2-for-1 fight. A long, grueling battle. ends up paying out for the Chaos side.
Itori keeping up that aggression. Had combat dodge come back up. BeAzrael would be headed down into the grayscale. That was an incredibly disjointed engagement. Calvìn
Nuts.
whiffs the ultimate there, avoided by Sarpei's second ability in mounted form. Just dodges out that damage. Calvìn does make it out alive. Cozyx, catch and release, says, my team needs me elsewhere, and he was right to do it. Peels back in, makes sure the Niflheim Wargs are able to come out ahead on that entire exchange. But it still is the Styx Ferrymen nursing a slight lead.
StreakUp use their ult to counter out the Fields of Love, but Hawkk is here. And a dash away right into the crush. The beads end up getting used as well as the ultimate. Small win for the Niflheim Wargs on the left side of the map where Spudio maintains the beads. So we haven't seen these big, crazy I'm a monsters yet from Hawkk just yet. The Scylla needs a bit more itemization to really get there, but started off this game somewhat nicely. Sarpeii dashes away, but who's in the real danger here? Maybe FrenchEmperor, who's rooted in place in a whirlwind of rage and steel.
Oh.
Into nothing. I'm a monster was used, but did not connect on what you would think would be consistent setup from the Wargs.
Tough situation there, man. I mean, we're lucky it happened in the early game when it wouldn't have mattered nearly as much. You know, Pyromancer hasn't spawned up. Now Hawk's realizing, all right, I gotta tighten up a little bit here. Can't be letting Cozyx down in situations like that.
Right, that's the miss. It's not gonna happen. I only got a couple each game. Right.
Coach, just be happy it happened in the first quarter. You can keep me on the field. I'm fine.
Yeah, no other options. I mean, if you keep whipping all game long, you can sub them out mid-game, unfortunately. So a small miss. Again, would have needed a bit of extra damage to fully get the kill on a FrenchEmperor, but didn't get to see that opportunity anyway. Both junglers have been active, and it's actually looked a couple times like Sarpei's the one who's caught out.
Okay.
But it's dashed away. Cozyx does not steal away the red buff, but forces a tense moment from FrenchEmperor. And you're liking the mobility myth of this Xing Chen early in the game. Just sending out some lines in the Styx Ferrymen side of the jungle. BeAzrael in with a double fear. Will not confirm his own blue.
No, and lose out on the majority of his HP as well. Xing Chen is one of the few gods in Smite that, regardless of game state, regardless of level, is always going to be able to get involved on map. No matter what, Ferocious Roar is going to find value from being able to take away some of that auto attack damage. No matter what, the displacement from the ultimate incredibly strong, and by nature of having a double leap, for the most part, going to be very safe. Up against an Awilix, not so much. But I've detracted from the primary point too much here, Dave. Let's talk about Hydra Storm.
Now we can get to it. You're right. So this is a big callback. I don't know the last time we actually talked about this. I am a firm believer that the biggest visual upgrade as far as menacing items from Tier 2 to Tier 3 is the Tier 2 Hydras to the Tier 3 Hydras, because that is the saddest little hors d'oeuvre, sausage, link, spearing fork. You know what I'm talking about?
My man's about to spear something at the fondue fountain.
That's right. He's getting something at the fondue table. And then Tier 3 looks really good. FrenchEmperor needs all of that Tier 2 damage right now. Won't get it because he's got to back away. I'm a monster for Hawkk, looking for a target. Won't find one. Then Sarpeii ends up completing the kill onto FrenchEmperor. So visually, Myth, yes, an unappealing item. And then look at that. That is a serious, menacing-looking spear fit for Poseidon himself. Now that's to say that the Tier 2 item is actually really solid.
It's like one of the best Tier 2s in the game.
Yeah, passive is actually very good on that item. Didn't get to see it do much there. Unfortunate, though, for FrenchEmperor, Myth, because early in this game it felt like the Awilix was actually going to get some things going. Now the jungle battle has actually started to tilt back a bit towards this Lancelot.
Yeah, Lancelot's been making a much bigger splash in these team fights, just really be able to get disruptive with that massive cripple field. Feels like has been just really restricting what the enemy's been able to do up against it. Even when you talk about the direct matchup, Awilix loses access to 2 of her key abilities in that cripple field. Can't leap off Suku, can't use Feather Step either, so Sarpeii has been putting a dampener on the Styx Ferrymen's engagement. A fair deal. But there still is the potential for FrenchEmperor to just completely shake up a team fight with one great gravity surge. We haven't seen it connect just yet. Nobody's been pulled in. But you've got the synergies with Calvìn, that belly flop and a gravity surge, a consistent setup tool. Hawkk in particular, very telegraphed on his leap. The Styx Ferrymen's jungler, I think, is not the last we've heard of FrenchEmperor.
No.
Especially now that he's got his, what'd you say, Poseidon-worthy
A
trident.
trident worthy of Poseidon himself. More so than the hors d'oeuvre spear that was tier 2, that's for sure. And I'll stand by it. My views have not changed in the couple of months since the first time we hashed through that bit. So a decent power spike, visually and literally, for the FrenchEmperor. StreakUp sends out their ult. Spudio forced to heal up with a couple of those potions. StreakUp has beads though, so there's still some safety in this lane for the Ishtar, should a gank arrive from the Niflheim Wargs. Spudio holds on to both beads and ultimate there as well, and actually sustains up quite nicely on this Cupid, so maybe no massive difference. But you do get the feeling that the early pressure, maybe mid-game pressure in this lane, still potentially favoring this Ishtar.
Yeah, StreakUp, I think, very adept at pressuring out Spudio. Spudio, for the most part, shouldn't be able to get value from Fields of Love. CC immunity from StreakUp's ultimate will avoid that with a good amount of ease. But as far as battles that don't result in deaths, you favor Spudio.
Well, that's where half the gold lead is Ishtar over Spudio, and the other half is iceice over their counterpart in Hawkk in the mid lane. 400 or 500 gold separating both carries on both teams. Everything else feels quite strong on either side. Calvìn in, Intoxicate down, Belch. Won't get the stun onto Hawkk. Now has to be careful because Sarpeii is pretty strong here. Gets brawlers into Sledge, so kind of hybrid tanky style build from the Niflheim Wargs jungler. Pyromancer stands, was looked at a moment ago by the Wargs, now may be fully committed on by the Styx Ferrymen.
Dave, I got a question. We'll talk about it later as Itori is able to engage on a FrenchEmperor here. Nearly should be able to chase him out.
They also give you time to think if it's actually a good question or not, Miff. FrenchEmperor got to jump away. iceice in a really bad spot. That'll be another one to Sarpeii, and the jungler picks up right where they left off after game 1. Calvìn in fatal strike range, but will belly flop away. Back camps and then maybe immediately to Pyro. But no, the Wargs not feeling like pulling the right side objective just yet.
Wargs do a great job of separating that engagement. Love what we saw from Itori chasing out there. FrenchEmperor was not allowed to help out iceice. And iceice, when isolated, pretty easy to jump on. Sure, Huang's got a good deal of safety, but once it's been utilized, the collapse in from the Wargs very clean. The question I had wanted to ask was...
So you thought about it, and it's still a good question?
Yeah, I think this is good. I think it's one that the Smite fans deserve to have an answer for.
Oh, goodness.
When you evaluate Calvìn, do you think the damage from burp comes from the stench of his breath, or maybe is it like a heat thing? Like, what's up with that?
Oh, again, this is great, because I get the chance to think about this while a rotation in from Cozyx will slow down the pressure onto Spudio. I think it's a force thing.
Yeah,
It's like air. It's like air pressure, you know, like connecting, and we'll see it here. I mean, look at that. It's like it's close to a scream, right?
It lifts him off the ground.
That's a nice pull back in. Finally, a combo on the gravity surge, and needed from the Styx Ferrymen. Though they are ahead in gold, their pressure had slowed down just a little bit. Red buff being looked at. The Belch once more will help out in securing a buff. Double Fields of Love, dueling dragons, and a gallop forward from Sarpeii. All of it going well for the Niflheim Wargs now in this secondary team fight, but it's Itori left alone around the Fury. Assists Sarpeii in picking up a double.
So the Wargs have sent 2 back on the grayscale from Styx Ferrymen, and they're still relatively healthy, but will not move in towards that gold Fury. Dueling Dragon's not available. Pillars of Agony down as well. You know that Styx Ferrymen haven't got much left in the tank, but instead it's a reset back to neutral from the Niflheim Wargs off a very clean team fight win. Just got to keep it consistent. The EU SEC known for one thing and one thing only, and it is taking 100% odds around these neutral objectives. You know,
That's right.
when I surf the VODs on Smite.Game and I can read the chat, or when I'm on Reddit and we talk about where the SPL
Those are some of your favorite things
up.
to do, by the way. Read Reddit and read chat.
Absolutely my favorite things. They're always talking about how these SPL teams are dropping objectives. I have never once seen that complaint for an EU SEC team.
Crazy, because Styx Ferrymen in game 1 stole 2 objectives
Just
from the
never
Niflheim.
seen those complaints, man.
Just snatched away a couple of objectives
Nobody's
from the Niflheim
complaining, all
Wargs.
right?
No, you're right. You know what? On a callback to the Bacchus,
Ishtar? Oh, okay.
it's got to be sheer force of burp because we already have ghastly breath
That's so ghastly.
with Cerberus, right? Unless that's like fire.
I'm thinking there's something like mystical about that. Whereas Calvin, or Bacchus rather,
Looks like maybe
it's
some
just a
liquid
lot of
in there as
wine.
well. Obnoxiously loud belch. So it's the
hurting your
volume.
ears. Okay.
It's the volume.
Uh-huh.
Doug bails us out once again. Appreciate you, Doug. So it's the volume.
It is loud too.
It is super loud. Imagine that on the world stage here in just a couple of months, just a belch of the gods rumbling through the amphitheater. And look, it's a 4D experience. We actually have scents in the
That's
stadium.
disgusting. Yeah, we just released old wine.
Just stale beer.
Yeah. That's awful.
No, we're not doing that. Don't worry.
Do you think?
We're going to enjoy it. No. We've gone far enough off script, Miff. We got to reel it back in. I'm not allowing it to happen. I'm not allowing it to happen. At this pivotal point in Game 2 between the Wargs and the Styx Ferrymen, it feels like a battle brewing that'll make the difference.
Brewing.
They appreciate it. Now, it is back-to-back games, Miff, where Sarpeii has put on a fantastic performance out of the jungle, near untouchable on the Thor in Game 1. And now this Lancelot has really picked up the pace. For the first time in a little while, it's actually Spudio taking the 1v1, but it's a 2v1 as Spudio won't die. StreakUp did it all, but it's not enough to flip the 3v1. Spudio baits wonderfully. I'll give a kill over to the Niflheim Wargs and a 6th for Sarpeii.
Man, StreakUp played it perfect, got punished anyway, right? The dash and the backflip combo to avoid the ferocious roar means that even with Cozyx there, StreakUp wins the 2v1. Spudio was in such a poor position. But with Sarpeii there, just enough. Doesn't matter how well you executed that fight. 3 versus 1, you just don't love your odds. Sarpeii, considering a chase out on the Calvin, thinks better of it. And the Niflheim Wargs, 18 minutes in, pull the Gold Fury.
Spot on, 18.5 minutes for the Niflheim Wargs. I'm a monster, do you need it? You'll take it.
We can't fire secure, man.
My goodness, right from underneath the Niflheim Wargs, the dueling dragons for the Styx Ferrymen steal away the Gold Fury. And that's a massive steal. The Wargs were really starting to pull away. And that slows things down. And it's going to be a Pyromancer pull for the Styx Ferrymen as well. Say what you will about the EU SEC, but I've not once seen a team.
I haven't seen the complaints, you know?
All right,
And
so
they got to get at them in the comments now, all right? If you guys are going to be roasting the Jade Dragons on repeat, they deserve it.
You're
These guys
actively
should get 'em
calling
too.
for our players to get BM'd, Miff.
Well, not BM'd. I want them to be held accountable for
Sure.
their actions.
That is, all right, that is tough, though, because, look, Hawkk has missed a few I'm a Monster so far. And we've even seen a few that have just been used for CC immunity, which is maybe not any fault of Hawk's, just has to leave the fight because of some dive. That's when you feel like you maybe should win. StreakUp, uses beads, uses ult, and that'll be enough to get away from the 6-1-2 Lancelot. But a moment, if you're Hawkk, you're hoping you win this game, and you're hoping that the springboard back in is not based off of that Gold Fury steal for the Styx Ferrymen.
Yeah, no, you got to hope literally anything else is the reason, right? Like, if you're Hawkk, you're okay with losing, but it's just not got to be because the gold has got out of control. Like, Sarpeii dives a little bit too far, gives over a personal Gold Fury to whoever kills him because he's 6-1 and his bounty's ridiculous. And then Hawkk can say, come on, man. Come on, bro. Like, you can't be doing that.
Yeah, unfortunately,
Can't
right
take
now,
all the kills and the ends.
right now, the big mistake is just the miss secure, but big is all relative to what's been going on so far in this game. Just 1,000 gold or so in the swing, but Styx Ferrymen have been able to maintain their pace. The Wargs have been playing a lot of catch-up here this game. Has not felt in control ever, despite an 8-3 kill lead. Neutral farm has been there for the Styx Ferrymen. And I think TheFrenchEmperor, despite not keeping pace with Sarpeii in the kills department, has done nicely, not falling that far behind on this Awilix, just the 1 level, probably a bit of gold, but still in a decent spot as far as build goes to burst down some of these squishier targets.
Yeah, got to put pressure on
Wow,
those
gold
squishier
is
targets, though.
Dead even.
Get on the relics. I've looked at Hawkk. He's had beads, I guess, the entire game. Spudio, for the most part, when he loses beads, it's because StreakUp's done it on his own. I would like to see TheFrenchEmperor get a bit more active on map. Just threaten, right? Like, use your blink, look for a knock-up, maybe you're pulling beads in a situation like that, and then next time around you got a better idea of what your follow-up's going to be. The gravity surge will actually connect, but instead it's been a whole lot of wait and see. French Emperor waiting on Calvin to start a fight with a belly flop or something along those lines. Well, Calvin's busy over and left.
Hitting
The
the stun. Hitting the stun, not the belly flop. But when you're playing Bacchus, got to get it done.
Swishy.
Here's the power of Sarpeii. Azrael forced away. Has Pillar of Agony. Won't use it, but disengage from iceice. Disengage from BeAzrael. Unfortunately for the Wargs, the only objective here on the right is Fire Giant, and I doubt you're just pulling that.
Especially without Hawk's ult.
Maybe that's the time to pull it. See, you get your confirm from elsewhere. Hasn't made much of a difference yet in this set. So definitely too big a target, the Fire Giant. So both teams, a bit of a swing, a bit of a mismiff over the last couple of minutes. Looking for the fights, but not really over anything. No Pyro, no Fury, only Fire Giant.
Yeah, strong disengaged blink from BeAzrael forced out a lot of resources from the Wargs. Seemed to me like Hawkk was really relying on that cripple field from Sarpeii, but cripple field doesn't put you in combat. Blink was able to avoid it pretty well. So Hawkk off the mark with his ultimate, Sarpeii the exact same position, which means the Niflheim Wargs will likely play slow for the next 30 or so seconds while we wait on those cooldowns. Styx Ferrymen, if they were aware of it, might have an opportunity.
Sarpeii shut down by Calvin. Big win for the Styx Ferrymen. Right around time when some of these objectives are going to be respawning as well. 40 or so seconds. Sarpeii will still be respawning. And maybe the best pick you can get now if you're the Styx Ferrymen, where Sarpeii is not going to be able to set the stage for any kills. That gives StreakUp a bit more confidence to step forward. Beads there for StreakUp. Use the ult and trade. We've seen this story before. And both carries hold on to both of their relics. So how impactful does that kill on a Sarpeii end up being, Miff? We might have to see around Fury time, around Pyromancer time, if that gives the Styx Ferrymen a bit of confidence.
Yeah, it's going to be 10 seconds on respawn by the time Fury is up. Itori doing his best to push it in their own favor, though. Does a whole lot of damage here.
Won't take very much, if any, at all. Now Calvin in a terrible spot, dueling dragons.
Let's go.
Doesn't push anyone back. Spudio on the monster, all of it connecting. That's a kill now back onto Calvin. Suddenly the Wargs have their own advantage here in game number 2, and it's a Primal Fury pull. But steal potential still close by. It was dueling dragons last time. Primal Fury does end up getting dropped. So again, when we talk about teams being a bit more cautious, this is what we mean. The Wargs pushing out a bit more before doubling back for the Primal Fury. And it looks like this time the Styx Ferrymen won't be in range to attempt the steal.
Sarpeii fully disengages to the right-hand side, but Azrael leaps forward, considers taking a fight here, considering nothing could happen on the Gold Fury side of the map. Standard answer, Fury goes down. Pyromancer will do the same, but in trade to the other team. Styx Ferrymen confirm this objective for themselves and keep the gold lead at that. Gold lead hasn't extended a whole lot in the last 20 or so minutes. Feels like it was like 6 minutes in when that gold lead had really started to balloon to that 1,000, 2,000 mark. Since then, has stayed stagnant for the most part. Should still give you a slight advantage moving in towards the Fire Giant. And we're starting to approach that time in the game, 25 some odd minutes in. Maybe likely that it enhances before we see it pulled proper.
Good with this pace of game.
But when we look at the Niflheim Wargs, it doesn't feel like they're playing into a massive deficit. Even in a 4 versus 5, Itori puts out enough pressure on his own that he's forcing kills onto the Ferrymen. Zones out French Emperor and iceice, peels back, shuts down Calvin as well. Just doesn't seem like the Styx Ferrymen have devised an answer to this Achilles just yet.
Certainly want to say in whether or not a fight happens. That's where, you know, you get 25 minutes in, any pick over on the right side of the map makes a difference. Or the Styx Ferrymen just take, look at the Wargs, they're so slow on this reply. It's only Itori who's close. We're going to get another steal. Is it going to be the Achilles? No, it won't. And the Ferrymen get the FG. Achilles won't make it out. And maybe a bit asleep at the wheel, or the Wargs, they were nowhere close to that FG, and the Ferrymen burn it and get it simply.
Maybe the Wargs were just saying, look, we've been slow all game, handshake agreement, objectives have been on, you know, on the books, on the level, we know how it's going down. Styx Ferrymen break that gentleman's agreement. They just pull the Fire Giant and Niflheim Wargs. Nowhere to be seen. we've had conversation about heat check around fire. With the Styx Ferrymen having such strong ward coverage, they're right to pull it. There's no way the Wargs can approach without the Ferrymen knowing.
Blinks exchanged. Azrael waiting to use that Pillar of Agony and won't get the chance. That's a big I'm a monster from Hawkk. On the Phoenix defense, maybe one more charge to get used, but no, now it's even. And look, there's a teleport for Itori as well. A chance to get back in this fight a bit quicker if it ends up getting upgraded. Niflheim Wargs, they lose Fire Giant. They maintain right side Phoenix, and now they've got dominance in the right side team fight. StreakUp's got to use the Aegis. Belch out, that slows down Spudio, but this 3 versus 2 feels just fine for the Niflheim Wargs. Unless StreakUp hits the necessary autos, Sarpeii still mounted, Itori dashes forward. Could be another French Emperor.
He's got
effectively dealing damage. Sarpeii has cleaned up StreakUp on the right side of the fight, and Itori doesn't get the kill. French Emperor does. And a messy fight drops 3 FG buffs off the Styx Ferrymen.
We didn't get a great look at the hero's arc that French Emperor was on in that team fight. You may have noticed that Sarpeii wasn't exactly present. He had taken a roundabout, lackadaisical approach to that engagement by going all the way through the jungle.
The Ryok style of loop.
Yeah, Ryok, Mr. Worldwide, I'm getting active, but it's going to take me a little while style loop.
Right.
Finds French Emperor in the back, loses the 1v1, disengages, Itori TPs in, loses the 1v1, and dies. While the rest of the Niflheim Wargs put in their work in the actual engagement. Taking Fire Giant off 3, no small task.
And that was the first big ult from Hawkk I've seen this game, and it came right on time. Azrael blinked into the back line, dashed, got Book of the Dead procced, and just never got to use the Pillars of Agony. I'm a Monster simply deleted the Hades before one of the most important teamfight ultimates of the game was able to get used. It feels like now we've just stabilized again, still around 2,000 gold, but I don't know if the Styx Ferrymen myth are feeling confident in shoving down any more of these objectives, possibly a tier 1 here. But I think you got to give some props to the fight back from the Wargs, where the Ferrymen play that Fire Giant moment wonderfully. But on defense, the Wargs really knew their limits. Itori gets double ulted. Does dash away himself. Now it's a Dueling Dragons. That doesn't connect.
Cozyx still getting aggressive though. Sarpeii off the mark. French Emperor able to blink his way out, but it's Calvìn who's been isolated.
We have seen this now a couple of times as well, where the Ferrymen throw out their initiation, get nothing, and then the Wargs with a counter punch pull one back. So tier 1 in mid ends up dropping. Tier 1 on left still miraculously stands. And the rest of the Fire Giant's going to fall off here in 30 seconds, but really it's 40 seconds on Calvin's respawn. Wonder what the Wargs are going to try to capitalize on. A tier 2 would feel just fine.
Yeah, even potentially a Phoenix here, considering how much has been used by Styx Ferrymen in that last fight. French Emperor's got no relics. Still have 20 seconds left as I finish this breath on Calvin's respawn. But it's a fallback to the Oni Fury. That'll generate pressure on map. You get the enhanced minion waves all the way across the way. Maybe a Pyromancer as well. Instead, no. Straight back to base. Get ready for this Fire Giant spawning in just under a minute. Feels like the Niflheim Wargs could have likely gotten a bit more pressure in a situation like that. But instead, keep it slow, keep it safe. You've been playing at a 2,000 deficit for 30 entire minutes now. Might as well not leave it up to risk. We've seen what the Styx Ferrymen have done on overextension. Niflheim Wargs not going to fall into the same trappings.
It's been kind of an awkward game where the Styx Ferrymen around the objectives themselves have felt more confident. But in like the individual scraps and fights across the map.
Stuff after the stuff, or
yeah, after the stuff, right? The
yeah,
Wargs.
The third after the stuff, yeah.
Right, the Wargs have looked a little bit better. It's been very, very weird to follow along with. But now maybe insta-pull from the Wargs when the Fire Giant spawns. This one's enhanced. Need to be here.
Yep.
Coming back from base goes Calvìn.
There he goes.
He's got bubble.
Yep.
He'll be able to belly flop in, absorb a bit of the pressure that the Wargs are going to throw out. Oh, avoid some of the poke. iceice got great poke. Maybe Hawkk does as well here. Look for a crush. Chunk down some of that damage. Sarpeii in behind the Styx Ferrymen. Switches sides, but doesn't cost him or the Ferryman.
Yeah, I thought Sarpeii was going to go for the hero ultimate there. 4 stacked on each other. Massive cripple field. Could have found some value instead. Disengages the rest of his team. were backing up in that situation, so had he gone in, would have been on his own for the most part. Niflheim Wargs had the defensive positioning in the Fire Giant pit, but are falling back to resustain. Fortunately for the Wargs, Styx Ferrymen not making use of this space. Instead, they just stand their ground as well.
We've seen this story a couple of times, though. It's an initiation onto Itori, who is simply too tanky, unless he's the last one alive, and everyone from the Ferrymen are sending damage towards this Achilles. Belly flop the belt, you need a knock-up, then a pull. You need a lot to kill off Achilles right now. But Calvìn also very, very tanky. 5-slotted, so still not max tankiness. But Cozyx thinks he's got something here onto BeAzrael. Lots of damage connecting, and the I'm a Monster from over the wall. A great start for Hawkk. And now the Niflheim Wargs have gotten rid of the Hades, separating things out from the blue buff pit. A big pullback from TheFrenchEmperor.
Got him.
Gotta be a kill on a Sarpeii, and it is. But Calvìn with the heart bomb waddles away. We end up standing at a 4 versus 4.
Yeah, I didn't spot that properly. CC immunity from Mantle of Discord. Massive for Sarpeii there, but the beads timer may lead me to believe that he had used it a bit off the mark on that gravity surge. I'm not absolutely confident in it, but in losing his life, you lose a lot of your pressure at that. Sarpeii is a major part of your burst.
Well, they're
Styx
going for
Ferrymen, they're still around.
TheFrenchEmperor around behind. Spudio has beads, but no Aegis, so burst potential there if Spudio ends up getting cut out. You also have Hawkk, who's halfway back to having the I'm a Monster. Itori looking for iceice. Has found iceice and StreakUp at that. Forces dueling dragons out. Just the bait from Itori. Enough to get some utility away from the Huang.
So now iceice not having a whole lot left of defensive tank, just that Aegis. Means that he should have a massive target on his back going to this next dance around the Fire Giant. Sarpeii, with Blink still available, can make it very difficult to be a Huang in a situation like this. Styx Ferrymen probably thankful for the opportunity to reset themselves there. Should be able to pick up a couple of Sentry Wards, 3 in pocket as of now. Niflheim Wargs have had defensive wards on the Fire Giant pit itself the entire time. Now, the first opportunity for the Styx Ferrymen to start taking back some space.
Our win conditions for both teams immediately, if you win a handy enough fight around this enhanced Fire Giant. A right side Phoenix open in the Wargs base and a left side Phoenix open in the Styx Ferrymen base. This could be good from Sarpeii, if not spotted out. Minion wave makes its way down mid, and there's no hyper defensive ward. So Sarpeii is gonna
slip on the horse
just behind the Styx Ferrymen, somewhat quietly.
We HP shields.
No, not yet.
We gotta charge that up.
Sarpeii. TheFrenchEmperor mounts up. Time to ride. Now gets spotted. So all of the drama that was built up by Sarpeii ends up making absolutely no difference at all. The Styx Ferrymen will be aware that a Lancelot lurking somewhere to their left. And in moments like this, you have to kind of look at where the map state is. Is something finally going to force a team back? Suddenly going to draw someone to one side of the map or the other? And no, the minion waves effectively clashing in the middle of both waves, and even at that, they're just standard minion waves. And so it's about positioning here. Who gets poked out? Who gets caught out at the 34-minute mark?
Poke advantage you would think would belong to Styx Ferrymen. Those snipe autos from StreakUp can be so disruptive. Just toss them from a range. It's not an Odysseus bow build, though, so largely single target. That one target, when they are hit, are definitely going to feel it. Niflheim Wargs pull the Fire Giant, but it's going slow.
That is pretty big, actually. Forces Itori's ult. I was wondering if the Achilles might be able to just get out without having to use Fatal Strike and Fields of Love, but Calvìn, no ult. BeAzrael, Pillars of Agony, somehow missing here as well. Spudio has been knocked up and dropped down. Here's your fight from the Styx Ferrymen.
Got him.
It's relentless. Ults not needed. Both carries are dead. It's a belch from Calvìn onto Cozyx. And the Styx Ferrymen want to send us to our first game 3 of the day.
Yeah, I love what BeAzrael was able to accomplish there. Forces out Sarpeii on his own, rotates back through the team fight, says, I don't need Pillars of Agony. I'll do it all off a base kit. 4 or 5 stack from Styx Ferrymen.
Wow, they're not going to go.
Massive opportunity, just walk into the Phoenix there. 3 dead for 40 seconds. Itori, no ultimate. We slamming Fire Giants.
No, they're not. Now they're going back to the Phoenix.
Am I on punked right now?
No, but they're going to get the Phoenix eventually. They're baiting Sarpeii and Itori out. They're going to clear wards. Wonder what the game plan is here from the Lancelot and the Achilles. They're on wards. Now the Styx Ferrymen just going to end the game. A back from Itori will be here shortly, but we've traded spots once again. The good news for the Ferrymen is they do end up getting the right side Phoenix. I didn't think they were going to commit onto one objective or the other. The bad news for the Ferrymen is that it's just the right side Phoenix, and they're still an enhanced fire giant standing. And so the Niflheim Wargs can likely deal with it, but iceice in some trouble, has to use the Aegis, and the Styx Ferrymen back and resetting at base. A big play from Sarpeii. Fatal Strike doesn't weave its way in. Itori does end up cleaning up the kill. iceice, Sarpeii both down in a 1-for-1.
Pretty valuable trade, I think, for Sarpeii there. Just getting that magical damage out of the Styx Ferrymen. Going to be massive here. That iceice, one of their best initiators with the dueling dragons, and very safe in the team fight. Would have been very difficult to shut down. So now the Niflheim Wargs need to make decisions quickly. They had not had the opportunity to push up those minions on right already. Starting to work their way into the base. It's a normal minion wave, but a fire minion wave right behind it. If you want the fire giant, if you want to make a play now, it's got to be fast. Or you got to send someone back, and the Styx Ferrymen will have advantage.
Titan's under attack by standard minions right now, so little damage is going to get clipped away. Nothing that'll end the game. All right, the benefit of having your right side Phoenix down is that you can go deal with the minions, but nobody's been able to just yet. You might send Hawkk back.
Sarpeii will do it on spawn.
Drop a crush, that's right, Sarpeii up in 10 or so seconds. But Hawkk will clear this wave at least. That hasn't given the Styx Ferrymen enough footing, though, to step forward immediately into the fire giant pit. And it looks like we'll do it all over again here, Miff, at the 37-minute mark. Styx Ferrymen and the Niflheim Wargs. The Styx Ferrymen lose this big fight, drop down to the loser side of this group, or we head to a game 3.
Enhanced Fire Giant defensive positioning held by the Styx Ferrymen, but ward on Fire Giant Pit somehow, some way, still belongs to the Niflheim Wargs. The Wargs learned a hard-fought lesson in the last Fire Giant dance, and it's when they got proactive, they got schmacked. So probably could have played a bit more defensive this time around. Styx Ferrymen with map state advantage, gold advantage, literally every advantage you could hold at this portion of the game, do have the onus to actually pull the Fire Giant. Niflheim Wargs very happy to keep it slow and just deal with these minion waves and keep them out of the base and wait for that right side Phoenix to respawn. If the Styx Ferrymen want something to happen, they're going to have to force it.
BeAzrael first forward. Remember, won a fight last time. Didn't even have Pillars of Agony. Not needed. Now what we've seen Hawkk do is trade out, or an I'm a Monster from outside the Pillars of Agony has been enough to send back this Hades. Can BeAzrael get it done yet again, though? Calvìn looks like he's picked up all the defensive itemization that he wants this game. Get a little damage on the back end as well. So as tanky as this Bacchus is now, it's as tanky as he'll remain, barring items changing throughout the rest of the course of this game. Right side Phoenix is going to be back up in another minute or so here. No damage on the Titan. Map state just about to be equalized. I wonder if we see Sarpeii on a big roundabout swoop again. It's felt like this Lancelot hoping to find that backline more simple than just galloping through.
Yeah, has tried that loop, what, 3-4 times now? Haven't seen much success from it. I think probably better served playing with his team instead. Just utilize that ultimate for space control, poke from a range. You can just hop on horse, throw out the spectral horse, and back up, rinse, repeat. It's actually a very, very strong poke tool. And having that additional HP shield means that on approach, you don't need to be too concerned on your trade. It's a weighted in favor of the Lancelot. Styx Ferrymen pull out the Fire Giant. Fire minion wave undealt with by the Wargs, but fire's going real slow.
This is awkward because your Phoenix is going to get taken down by these fire minions eventually if the Wargs aren't able to
Someone's going to deal with it.
double
It's
back
so
and
close.
deal with the minions. Yes, but does now seeing Hawkk chasing down these last few fire minions give the Styx Ferrymen positioning around the FG? It has given Calvìn a bit more confidence. He'll belly flop onto Itori, who's pulled back in, and a fatal strikeout from the Achilles starts off the fight as iceice backs away from Cozyx, and it's a blink in from Sarpeii. StreakUp able to backpedal away, and BeAzrael's getting it done. In the back line of the fight, the Styx Ferrymen find their opening. They'll find their kills. God bless, they better find the game here in game 2 because they have only got Itori to deal with for the next minute.
Itori injured at that, trying to deal with the minion wave. Probably not the best use of your time, man. Got to get back to base and heal up here. I think that fight would have gone so much better had Sarpeii actually committed. He blinks in, he gets into the backline after the ultimate. We see the Aegis from iceice. Sarpeii just walks himself out. The whole time, Cozyx is putting in infinite work. Reinitiation sees them both die. Now the Styx Ferrymen, we do get to go 3.
In a 41 and some change minute game, the Styx Ferrymen take game number 2 and send us on to our first game 3 of the weekend here. And so, Miff, not only do we get a game 3, it's a 42 or so minute game here in game 2. That's like payback from a 15-minute F6 into a 17-minute F6 to start off our casting weekend.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right. It's a severe balance. We get the shortest possible set to start off our day, and now we go the distance, not only in game 2 specifically, but in this set. Remember, this one very, very important as far as where you end up later on in this group. In a game 3, we'll decide it. The Niflheim Wargs and the Styx Ferrymen, they'll go to game 3 right after this.
our third set of the day goes the full distance as the Styx Ferrymen are able to bring themselves a win in game number 2 and now bring us to game number 3 over in the European region. Matchup between our 6th and 4th seed is definitely one that we probably had some expectations to keep going out through here. And early on, Charlie, when we start talking about these two teams, I mean, Niflheim Wargs really good at getting those fights early. I mean, Sarpeii getting a lot of great kills early on. We're looking at a almost 8-2 kill lead at one point. And then you look up at the scoreboard, or I should say, you look over in the top left corner, and every single objective that was being started by the Wargs was being finished by the Styx.
I'm calling it a caster's curse, man. Right as all those objectives were being pulled, Niflheim was saying, you know, all these people are talking about how the SPL pros, they drop a lot of objectives. The EUSCC never drops objectives. And then it was just steal after steal after steal. No confirmations were coming through there for the Wargs. And then the Ferrymen, of course, I think great combo between Calvìn and TheFrenchEmperor consistently throughout. I was very impressed with the Awilix play, and also StreakUp was just wailing away. These auto attacks coming from the Ishtar were absolutely hard fragging. So I think definitely a couple different contenders here for things to take away. I mean, the Niflheim Wargs, if I'm them, I'm probably thinking we dropped the ball on this one. Definitely could have been an easy 2-0 if they played their objective play a little bit better. But I think that Awilix composition as well as the Ishtar, two things that maybe need to be dealt with a little bit better next time around.
Yeah, Azrael on this Hades was just an absolute menace on that pick. I mean, we've been seeing how strong Hades is all throughout the SPL. We saw signs of light of it during the SCC right before we kind of took the extended break from there. This Bacchus also from Calvìn was really doing some wonders, able to get some good setup throughout the mid and late game. But I mean, it just goes down to show that kills don't mean everything in a game. Again, when your jungler at one point, Sarpeii was like 7-1, 7-2, and his team is 1,000 gold behind, just goes to show that objectives more so the name of the game. Once you get to these late game team fights, TheFrenchEmperor was able to really step up on this Awilix. And I was more impressed by iceice's mage play than I was his assassin play from game number 1. This Huang looks solid for iceice.
Yeah, I did. I was sleeping on the Huang a bit, I won't lie. I was kind of like, I don't know what iceice is going to be able to do here. Dueling dragons. To be fair, early on, we're missing a bit, and I will say, not an easy ult to hit if you're not consistently playing Huang. You got to aim the back dragon. That's a tip that Lermy gave to everyone, like once that character came out. But once you can actually land those dueling dragons, big burst damage, big setup as well for your team. So yeah, I agree. I was doubting the Huang, but it ended up pulling through as well. Those damage numbers don't lie. So I'm thinking if I'm the Wargs once again, thinking about either dealing with the Ishtar somehow. The Awilix, I think, maybe just don't pick into that composition so much. Either way, the knockups were they're pretty deadly.
Yeah, I felt like the Awilix may not have been the reason that that team necessarily won, but the kind of the setup around that got allowed for. But we do get to jump into the picks and bans for game number 3 between the Niflheim Wargs and Styx Ferrymen. The Wargs this time will take that first pick slot for themselves. It makes you wonder now, Charlie, will Styx Ferrymen ban away the Thor and not let Sarpeii have a chance to run that one back from game number 1? Had a really strong performance, 10-1 on that one. He ended up only dying at the very end during the Titan push for his team. And then it kind of makes you wonder, you know, this Huang made all the way to the second wave of bans in game number 1, got picked up in the top 3 of game number 2. Wonder if maybe there's any priority towards that pick here in game number 3.
I'm thinking the Ishtar being taken away by the Wargs, definitely a smart call. This has to be the Thor here, right, from the Styx Ferrymen. I mean, maybe they're just riding that high from game number 2, but you got to think, yeah, game number 1 got to still be reigning in their heads, and they are going to take away that Thor from Sarpeii. Definitely a good look because of how good Sarpeii looked on that character. So now the option is, what will the Wargs see with the first pick? In this case, an Osiris. Maybe they're wanting to see, you know, are they going to take the Cupid? Is this something they want to look towards and not give it up? But the Osiris, always an annoying pick and can play 2 roles pretty well.
Yeah, some decent flexibility in that between jungle and solo lane over there. We'll see as the rest of the draft starts coming through, maybe where that pick does get allocated. But does leave 2 over for Styx Ferrymen. Now, Charybdis was an answer to kind of the Cupid play earlier on into the day. Gives you a lot of safety in that dual lane. That gets picked up by Styx Ferrymen. And I wonder if maybe you grab your other carry with Huang, but no, it's just going to be a full draft of the dual lane. Charybdis and Ymir for Styx Ferrymen.
Yeah, if Ymir's going to make it through and the Wargs aren't going to show prioritization to it, might as well grab that Ymir. But of course, the Osiris doesn't really have to worry about that wall, especially when you're making sure to use that form. And the Fafnir also making it through. Because the picks and bans have changed up just a little bit, and that's a little bit more of these characters getting through once again. So we're going to see the Fafnir, and we're also going to see that Osiris. So it's part of the front line Could be the full front line, but also part of the front line, depending on where that Osiris goes. Picked up here for the Wargs. And if they want to pick like that Cupid, for example, needs to be grabbed now, because if not, you got to assume that'll be taken away in the second wave of bans. But since they didn't prioritize it so high, you got to imagine that Spudio not too concerned about it, and that is going to be the call. Just grabbing that Merlin before that second wave of bans.
So mid laner now picked up for the Niflheim Wargs. Wonder if Styx Ferrymen will answer the same. No, they will not. I was thinking maybe Huang as a pickup, go back over there for iceice, but instead it is going to be the Guan you picked up for Styx Ferrymen. So that means mages are could now be at least contested by the Niflheim Wargs to ban a couple of those ones away. No hunter pickups means we could see a couple of those from Styx Ferrymen. We'll start off by at least seeing the Chernabog for the Ferrymen.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a good call. The Chernabog just brings so much global presence and annoyance. If you're trying to take a solid 3v3 fight mid, and then a Chernabog just flies in, it can mess up your whole dynamic. So I think probably smart to take away, but as you called out, that Huang not going to make it to the second wave, or through the second wave of bans. So the Styx Ferrymen are going to have to look for something else for iceice to pilot in that mid lane, as well as the Rama. So the Ferrymen really focusing out that dual lane. They don't want to worry about these hunters, especially the ones with attack speed stims. You can see the Fafnir coerce definitely going to come into the conversation. I'm thinking objective burn as well. It's probably smart. Take away 2 of those hunters, but it looks like finally the Huang is actually going to be that last ban there for the Wargs. A little bit worried about that jungle presence as well.
Yeah, maybe that late game execute could have been a bit of a threat over there. Does end up leaving the Cupid open, which has been something that's been prioritized so far throughout the day. So seeing that still make its way through the bans means that Niflheim Wargs do have that hunter that they can go towards over there. Curious as to where the Styx Ferrymen will go now. Need their mid laner, need their jungler, as one of each of those do get banned away, at least in that wave of it. It will be a Scylla for Styx Ferrymen, so it gets you a little bit of extra bump in that mid lane to kind of help clear up. Scylla, Merlin going to go kind of even in that regard early on. Late game, we know what both of these characters can do. Objective shred for Merlin. One tap potential for the Scylla. What is a jungle maybe missing here from the Styx Ferrymen that can kind of iron out this composition?
That's a good question. For me, I'm thinking setup comes to mind, because so far, I mean, Ymir freeze is great, and of course, Guan Yu, if you can actually land that cavalry charge, that'd be ideal as well. But the Scylla ult needs that setup, because it's not easy to land I'm a monster with incredible setup. Now, without that much, you think that'd be the call, and it looks like just running it back. I don't think there's too much easy application here for the leaps, but you're looking at a Ho Yi, a Nike, a Fafnir, should be just fine. You've got your tools for that gravity surge. So it looks like FrenchEmperor is just feeling good on the Awilix, and I think a decent matchup into it. Not exactly bringing that much setup for I'm a Monster, but at this point, you could just be hitting late game crushes, and that's all you need. Make sure you're confirming those objectives with I'm a Monster, and you should be just fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think Sick'em, Crush with a Poly maybe thrown in there. Could be some one-tap potential. Which of these two teams is going to win and face off against Hex Mambo later on? We'll find out in game number 3.
What a prize, Myth. You win this one, you get to go play Hex Mambo, who F6'd their opponents twice today. Look, on the other side of this is a staunch opponent that you're going to have to face, but you love the opportunity. Not a team in the Hex Mambo that we saw drop a lot of games. No sets over the course of Phase 3, but anything can happen, Myth, come tournament time. And that's what the Wargs and the Ferrymen fighting for here in Game 3. We saw a crazy tug of war in Game 2.
It was going back and then forth and then back and then forth. You're right, man.
Again and again and again. One thing, though, to note, Myth, is the Wargs felt like they were piling on kills early and often. They were often 5-6 kills ahead in the early part of the game, but consistently 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 gold down at points. They had poor objective control given how good their kill control was early in Game 2.
And unfortunately for the Niflheim Wargs, that is going to be a consistent here in Game 3. You haven't got a single ability on the Niflheim Wargs that could contest a crush. Iceice's second ability beats out the individual burst of literally everything the Wargs have got.
Ho Yi-ult?
That's like 250 damage per tick.
Right. You get a bunch of chances, though.
You gotta be real. I mean, it's a fair bet that Scylla's gonna mess up at least one confirm,
Right.
but no, I
no,
think that
confirm-wise, you're taking the insta-burst of Crush.
of
every single
just
time.
Crush, and that's
Right.
not I'm a Monster. That's
Right.
not Shards of Ice. Just crush.
Hawkk still missed one last game. That's been an issue for the Wargs now in back-to-back games. They won game 1 despite it. Game 2, actually, you know, it ended up being a pretty impactful Gold Fury steal. It gave the Styx Ferrymen a nice little jump start as far as gold goes back into that game. Won't say that's the game-ending moment because the Wargs had opportunities. Oof, goodness, BeAzrael needed one more auto. Itori, if all those Wrens connecting, maybe you're considering a solo kill going the other way. We have not seen a solo kill in the solo lane in a little while. This Guan Yu will sustain up quite nicely, though. Won't really feel the effects of that early trade.
You know, it's a bit, but I'll say it. Solo kills in the solo lane got patched out. Like, the TTK changes should almost entirely remove that opportunity in the solo, especially in a situation where both players have access to teleport. The fight has to start at sub like 40% for it to happen. If you think you're in any danger of that range, go back to base TP in. That's what BeAzrael did.
Well, Sarpeii, Myth, has put on a couple really good performances. Despite a loss in game 2, we'll need more of that on the Osiris here in game 3. Does drop the blue buff. There's an objective steal happening on the other side of the map that actually won't be a steal. Nice ricochet there from Spudio, sends back Calvìn. So the Warg successful on purple buff defense and blue buff invade. And you need it. Look, we've seen Thor from Sarpeii, we've seen Lancelot from Sarpeii. You need early game pressure if you're going to play this Osiris here in game 3.
And early game's been Sarpei's bread and butter so far this set. The Lancelot, I believe, ended around 7 total kills, but started that game 6-1. And that was all throughout the early. Osiris in a position and similarly strong in the early that I think Sarpeii could really leverage that. Doesn't have the easiest targets, though. BeAzrael, once he gets access to that ultimate, will be very difficult to lock down. French-Emperor has plenty of escapes. Calvìn, on the other hand, that could be your target.
Spudio jumps right into a double freeze and a double wall. It's Whirlpool. Instead of auto attacks from StreakUp, still nearly gets the kill on a Spudio. He's got to dodge a couple, and little body blocking from Cozyx there does separate first blood from StreakUp. Those Charybdis now, and game 3 off to a really nice start. Necessary there from Cozyx to be in that position because it was great setup from Calvìn. It's like life hasn't gotten much easier for BeAzrael. He used the teleport just a few moments ago and has already had to use 2 of the potions in that chalice. And so Nike solo Myth. We've seen a Nike support already today. But Nike solo could be a good dive bomb style of look here from Itori and maybe some good setup in an AoE nature for the Wargs.
Yeah, once we see this first item finished up, you'll see Itori get a significant edge in ability to clear wave. But once BeAzrael's got Breastplate of Valor, self-sustain, defense will really remove any of the intrigue of a solo kill. Itori's been able to keep it interesting, ticking over to level 5 first. Ultimate use nearly drops BeAzrael to about that 20% threshold. But I'm thinking BeAzrael's going to be able to turn this one around pretty consistently going forward, barring some rotations from Sarpeii.
Cozyx jumps forward. Must be help from the jungle. There sure is. Sarpeii here on left. Calvìn stunned, and there's a tether out. Unfortunately, this is the life of a Ymir. You get caught out, you have no real escape. And that'll be first blood for your Osiris. StreakUp still here as well. It's a purple buff now respawned. Iceice somewhat low. Going to be difficult to rotate in and help out with this. And purple buff dropped by Sarpeii, so a great rotation over to duo from this Osiris. Not only first blood, but stolen purple buff.
I think StreakUp just bluffs Sarpeii really hard. The dash in aggressively from Charybdis, if Sarpeii digs in his heels and says, I'm fighting here, Charybdis does not have the resources to win that engagement. You would have likely forced out that ultimate. But the posturing, I think, probably leads Sarpeii to believe that there's some allies from the Styx Ferrymen on their rotation in. Maybe iceice finished up that red buff, comes over to purple. Could have been an opportunity for the Osiris to take away a defensive ultimate from StreakUp, but, you know, why risk it? Why risk it in a situation like that? And if I'm thinking about it, armchair psychology, you know I love to do this. Why would StreakUp dash in there? You almost have to assume that he's got ally. You have to, actually. It's not even an almost. You have to.
Why would he dash in? You just explained why he would. To pump fake Sarpeii.
Yeah, but the pump fake doesn't really net you much besides forcing Sarpeii to back up.
Yeah, that's
and he
it.
had
There you go,
already
period. End of sentence.
He had already gotten what he came for. He was backing up regardless.
Armchair psychology myth. What kind of read do you get on me? Sarpeii will jump onto Calvin. Oh no, is it going to happen to the Ymir again? It sure is, and it's another one for Sarpeii. Suddenly the Osiris getting a bit stronger here in the early game. Golden Blade Mannequins paying off just fine. And right over to the Oracles. Unfortunately for Calvin, it's now an 0-2 start, and the kills have fallen in maybe the worst possible place. But French Emperor desperate to keep pace. Heads over to the right, but no dice onto an Itori gank.
If I'm Sarpeii, I'm saying let's run that back. Let's get on Calvin again, and again. Calvin has no way to defend himself. The slow from Osiris makes it impossible or nearly impossible to use the wall to separate. Even if you do use the wall, there's like a chance Osiris just walks through it. And having gone Sunder in first slot, you've got no defense from this relic. Your defense is a good offense. If Calvin's starting the fight, awesome. Freeze, Sunder, Glacial Strike, damage output's crazy. If you're getting the fight on you, Sunder, oh no. All right, well, they have less defense, but I'm dying.
Oh, I thought there was more after that.
No, I mean, that's it. I wish there Calvin wishes there was more after that.
No, we're just jumping on him. Yeah, I mean, if you get vision on this, the Ymir, got to imagine that's where Sarpeii and the rest of the Wargs might start to hover. Look, no support in the world, SPL or otherwise, is immune to the old feed Ymir game. We're not quite there yet for Calvin, but another couple deaths drop in. We're a bit worried. Freeze on a Spudio. Nice burst damage from StreakUp. The Cozyx here as well. It's an ultimate down from Spudio. And there's a rotation through from Hawkk out of mid, but it won't be there in time. We'll just sit back and farm up.
Cozyx tries to confirm the kill onto Calvin, throws out the stun, whiff, disengages entirely. The damage output was there, but considering Spudio had just used the beads previously, probably not a whole lot of chase potential. Maybe just a dissuasion tool. Hey, I'm Fafnir. It's like when a bear's nearby, you got to get big. Cozyx does it.
Yeah, that's happened to me so often. I know exactly what you got to do.
You don't know you need to know.
You said that so casually. You know, like what happens when a bear's close to you? You got to get huge.
Yeah, bro.
Why do you think I keep working out? I keep working out so I can fight off a bear.
Well, no, you don't want to fight the bear.
No, I want to look big.
If you hit the bear, you die.
The bear looks at me and says, that dude works out, I'm leaving. And that's why I've done it. Calvin, run down again. 0-3 now to start this game on the Ymir. Now, French Emperor, actually just a few moments ago was... Am I misremembering? I thought French Emperor was one level up on Sarpeii a second ago somehow, but maybe I'm crazy. Sarpeii now takes the lead over French Emperor by about 1.5 levels on another good fight on left.
Dave, I want to clarify. I've thought about it. I'm pretty sure you're not supposed to get big when a bear's around.
I think it depends on the bear.
No, you curl up with bears.
It depends on the bear. It 100% depends on the bear. If it's a polar bear, it's all over. Like, regardless of what you do. You better have a snowmobile out there in Antarctica with you because you're in some serious trouble. Yes.
Antarctica's like got to be the most dangerous desert on the planet.
It's got to be, and it is a desert.
I know, right? I drop it casually, you know?
Right. Yeah, no, I've never run into
a polar bear.
A polar bear, a grizzly bear, a brown bear.
If you do, curl up. The get big was bad advice.
So what type of... So Sarpeii is like a polar bear here in Game 3.
Avoid him, yeah.
And Calvin is curling up into the shards of ice because he's in an Antarctic... You know, he's in Ymir. He's frozen anyway. He's frozen with fear. And the polar bear that is Sarpeii is simply running him down over and over and over again.
Calvin was prepared for a brown bear, and he got a polar bear, right?
That's right.
When you curl up, you're just kind of hoping the bear gets bored.
Right.
Sarpeii is not getting bored. He's here to spread malice and hatred and his Berserker shield damage, and it's spreading well. Calvin.
Calling for the malice.
He hasn't fallen behind, though. You know, the Ymir hasn't really suffered too much. Kozyk's been spending a whole lot of time just hovering in the jungle, hasn't really spent a whole lot of time farming.
No.
Instead has allowed his teammates to solo out these waves, has given Hawkk over about a half-level lead. Calvin's not feeling so bad about it, and it hasn't really even net like individual leads for Sarpeii. What is that, about a half level for him too? It's not a big deal.
Level 1.5 a moment ago, maybe now a half level. Gold Fury. All right, Wargs. We haven't confirmed like 3 objectives in a row. And this one's gonna get dropped again. A nice wall from Calvin. Does slow down the fight. Could it happen again, though? Calvin stunned and run down by Sarpeii. You gotta fight back. It's a polar bear. No, wait, that's the one you have no chance anyway.
Yeah, you running.
Yeah, you're running regardless. That's your only chance. Unfortunately, Sarpei's got great vision of this Ymir. Not immediately back to Gold Fury, though now the Niflheim Wargs are going to pull the objective while Itori runs down iceice and French Emperor in mid. You've got Burn, you've got a Merlin, and you've got a Gold Fury. You never know. The Styx Ferrymen not in range to steal it away.
French Emperor now on the retreat. You know, that was a wild Gold Fury arc. We saw the Gold Fury get
all
pulled.
about the arcs on this
It got
cast.
pulled, reset, pulled, okay? And that was not reset like we got to take the fight. It was them arguing about who's going to tank it and nobody was in range. So the 2 resets. Calvin saw that and thought to himself, that's crazy, these guys are nuts, I got to walk in. And he just died.
This would be a massive shutdown if the Styx Ferrymen are able to find it. And they are not. Sarpeii would go up and over with Lord of the Afterlife. So Calvin rumbling his way to the right side of the map, would love to help out his jungler, not needed. A 1v1 brewing over on left. StreakUp the obvious advantage. Hit your autos, and he does! And finally, signs of life from the Styx Ferrymen. StreakUp with a solo kill onto Spudio. And a massive one at that. Gives a little free farm time over to the Charybdis.
Yeah, Spudio has been getting bullied pretty consistently in this lane. Hou-Yi, one of the better gods at the 1v1, but Charybdis just uniquely suited to dealing with Hou-Yi's kit. That ultimate won't really find a whole lot of value. The combo is pretty easy to avoid as well. And so your auto attack trades is really what it's going to come down to. I think it is absolutely criminal. StreakUp should be able to survive this. Just ult out, walk out with that CC immunity. No way Sarpeii goes for the dive. It is absolutely criminal that Cozyx is 0-0-4, 100% kill participation onto his direct lane opponent, the enemy support, who is sitting at 0-4-0, 0 affected kills, and he's down a level.
Who are you yelling at, though?
I'm yelling at Cozyx. How's
Okay,
that
all right.
happen, bro?
Well, yeah, that's the question. I didn't know if you were worried about game mechanics or what.
Hey, yo, aggro, get eyes on this, man. I don't think it's right.
I mean, it is kind of crazy. But to your point, Myth, maybe he's just giving over more farm and...
His team's not doing great for it, you know, unless it's Sarpeii soaking up all that farm.
I mean, they're doing okay. They're 2,500 gold up at 13 minutes, which between these two teams has been a pretty speedy pace. Now over to the Pyromancer. The Wargs are going to try to confirm the objective again. No, they won't, because the Ferrymen show some face, but now the Pyro's just been dropped back to the Styx Ferrymen. And now it's both teams arguing who's going to tank it up, and they both agree uninterested. Pyromancer will wait for its opponent here in just a little bit of time. It's very cautious around the Pyro, not wanting to force a fight, despite having a jungler in Sarpeii, 2 levels ahead and 3-0-1.
Yeah, Sarpeii can do just about no wrong on map. I don't think there's a single 1v1 that he loses as of right now. Maybe StreakUp with all that lifesteal from Devourer's Gauntlets, but otherwise you're feeling just fine about any other 1v1. So have Sarpeii be one of your primary initiators. I think that's a great call for him. And with the tether, even with not going for standard defense items, you've got a bruiser item for Berserkers. Tether just gives you so much mitigation that I think you're not overly concerned with the damage output from Styx Ferrymen just yet, especially considering this slightly OG build from iceice, Soul Gem in second slot with Book of Thoth. You're not really too penetration stacked just yet. Soul Gem, not the biggest power spike on the planet. Feels like Sarpeii in a very good position to make something happen.
Sarpeii is in position. Could it be the 5th of the game onto Calvin? Gotta be. Shards of Ice won't do much. The wall does slow down Spudio. Does buy time for iceice to rotate in. Crush the little burst damage. 0-5 now on Calvin. And I was bailing him out earlier on. I said, look, no one's immune to the old Ymir feed game. And, you know, at 0-2, we weren't quite there yet. We've gotten there, but I think you've done a nice job of also kind of bailing Calvin out. Where
It's not me. It's Cozyx.
Sure, okay. Cozyx is bailed. You are bringing up the bailout that's happening, maybe thanks to Cozyx, which has been a lot of farm handed over to the rest of the team. French Emperor blinked on and slowed.
Oof.
And Rend! One shot more was needed. Simply too much CC, and Itori won't get out from beneath the tier 2 tower, and that'll be 1-for-1 trade. More time for Sarpeii to build up a lead here on the map while French Emperor's gone.
French Emperor almost styled on him right there. I love that feather step into the rend. That's the only way you avoid that shot that would have killed you. Unfortunately, got to get point blank for feather step, which means that shield wall will connect. Sarpeii, bullies StreakUp out. Spudio, thankful for the assistance. And maybe a purple buff invade as well, but keep your eyes on the Ferrymen. They're 3 stacked on the way in.
Calvin, relentless.
He doesn't care. Why would he?
Not shut off. Finally, Cozyx pulls a level. Nope, Calvin equalizes the level lead right as I finish the sentence. We have talked about Ymir a good bit. So net worth-wise, God, not even that crazy of a gap in net worth either.
700?
That's nuts.
I mean, Cozyx has been on the map for like 90 to 100 more seconds than Calvin, right?
Yeah.
Like 5 repeated deaths. I wish I'd kept track, but no, I think Calvin arguably.
It's got to be more than that. Surely his death timer's been longer than 20 or 30 seconds, right? Although if
No, right now it's like 20 something, I think.
Right. Yeah, so
So
maybe
early.
100 total seconds off the map. Called a minute and a half.
And
Little over.
it hasn't amounted a whole lot for Cozyx. I would argue Calvin has done more on map. Even in dropping down, he's walking up, he's getting freezes, he's getting walls, he's getting active.
Now, the real value, though, is for Sarpeii, who's top of the net worth charts, while French Emperor is only above the support. So there's a massive gold gap there, where Sarpeii has been able to farm and pull a nice lead. Styx Ferrymen actually pull the Oni Fury here. Where's the Osiris? That's got to be the question. Burn from Hawkk, chasing down the Styx Ferrymen. Calvin will die for the 6th time this game. And now it's Sarpeii on the chase, wanting a different target. Found iceice. I'm a monster used defensively. And no pull in thanks to the beads. Sarpeii with another, this time finally onto a different target. It's the Scylla. And another good fight from the Niflheim Wargs.
Styx Ferrymen just caught out, spend the entire time getting wounds on their back as they try and retreat. The Niflheim Wargs
Can't believe they pulled the Oni.
just chasing them in there. That was a good call. What do you mean?
By the Styx Ferrymen to pull the Oni at the beginning of that fight?
Oh, no, I thought
Oh
you
no,
meant
the
like,
Niflheim Wargs for sure. They better pull the Oni.
Job.
I would have been mad if they didn't. I'm thinking at the beginning, you got Sarpeii roaming around the polar bear,
He is a polar bear.
looking for a target.
Anybody. Those polar bears want any
They
smoke
want
they can
anything.
get.
They're hungry. They're eating sardines all day. They need some sustenance, you know? And Sarpei's gotten it. It's been a lot of Ymir, but a bit different down the stretch now. Unfortunately for the Wargs, they're going to lose their solo laner, who was attempting a purple buff steal. Maybe got the purple buff, but
Wait, just do fire.
that'll open the door. Yeah, 4 members
Yeah,
of the
pull the
Styx
fire.
Ferrymen on left. Spudio
Full fire?
now dead. They don't get the pyro, but they do end up going back to the fire.
They just tanked it for it. They weren't even hitting it. They were trying to figure
iceice
out what
is
they
going to
wanted
rotate
do.
over here. If iceice steals this fire giant away,
Oh, this is it.
oh, it's too early.
Too early. Way too early. Yeah.
But could still be a crush.
Is he
I'm
going
a
to kill
monster
Hawkk?
down. Hawkk
No way,
gets
dude!
killed off by iceice. Mifflin beside himself.
Are you serious?
And the Niflheim Wargs lose 3
He had both relics.
and don't get either
David!
objective.
David, are you
Do
serious?
not call me David.
The Pyromancer Travolta meme, what do I do with my hands? Into Fire Giant Pool, into Soloed by Iceice True Combo, L plus ratio. I can't believe it. I'm on punked. I am on punked.
And
Now
Ferryman-
Sarpei's
and they get another kill, a massive shutdown.
He juked back into it, bro. He was out. Oh my god. No way, dude.
What angle of tilt are you right now? Are you a full 180?
Bro, I'm not a carpenter. I don't know what they are, but whatever, like, completely perpendicular to the ground is or parallel, I don't
You're at 180 degrees. You've gone full circle. You're nearly 360 degrees.
Oh my god.
What a terrible swing of this game for the Wargs. They lose 2 individual picks on left. Now Sarpeii randomly gets picked for a big shutdown. The Styx Ferrymen also get a kill with iceice. Stop the fire giant. Calvin does die again a moment ago, but
Hawkk had both relics, dog. The crush, you have to throw it. Scylla literally reaches into the ground, pulls out arcane energy, lobs it across her screen. It spins in the air, lands, has to form a full circle. You have to press the key again to pop it. That is all time where Hawkk could have hovered his little left index finger over to whatever he's got his relic bound to and just immuned all the damage. And he just didn't do it. He just didn't do it, man.
I expect this tilt when, like, Zapman doesn't use one of his relics. Or so. Actually, no, he's gotten a lot better about that. Zap is a relic user nowadays. I expect the same.
Zapman's not getting soloed 3 versus 1 into a Scylla.
All right, you're right. Well, that's not what I was trying to say. I was just saying, if we're yelling about these relics, I want to keep it up. Pyromancer does finally drop for the Wargs. Took a bit of drama to get there. Now 3,000 gold ahead. It's good. We can take a breather after the. In one of these teams, running face first into Hex Mambo tomorrow, who double F6 to their SOC opponents earlier on today. Now you expect a closer matchup than that, but some familiar mistakes starting to brew against a team, tomorrow in Hex Mambo that does not make a lot of mistakes, and they like to play aggressive and they like to force issues. Itori has been at the forefront of a lot of the last few initiations, both offensively and defensively. Niflheim Wargs will lose their soul in Ultimate to keep their Nike alive for the time being. And now I think we do enter a bit of a slower pace of game here, Miff, with only the Fire Giant left up. But Itori gets caught without ult. Wonder if now is a call from the Styx Ferrymen.
Those 2 members that just killed Itori have been fighting Itori for an entire minute and a half. He didn't get caught in the jungle.
No.
He wasn't caught off guard.
Yeah.
He took a fight in lane, used his ultimate to survive,
Sure did.
walked back in and died.
Did that.
That is wild.
Now Spudio under some pressure. Azrael steps forward. Lots of damage on the French Emperor. It's Azrael who's simply tanking up this tower now, but Cozyx isn't going to supply much more damage. iceice also rotating in from mid.
That's a good bounce.
Spudio with mountains of damage for the Styx Ferrymen. Hawkk flickers through the crush this time. That's a big turnaround of damage. Uses the beads. Steps back and away. iceice with I'm a Monster. Lets it drop. Catches Spudio, who's already got a kill, but Sarpeii in the back line has made his presence known. iceice drops the crush, but Sarpeii unconcerned. This should be another. But no, beads and Aegis used. Fire Giant now pulled. StreakUp close by. Jumped on by Cozyx. Fire low. Fire stolen by the Styx Ferrymen. The Niflheim Wargs can't buy a secure in this set. They'll get the deicide, but they've lost Fire Giant, and it's another stolen objective. Mifflin beside himself. The Wargs get a deicide. The Wargs get a deicide, but they lose another objective.
There is not a shred of logical consistency with what I have seen this game. This has been one of the slowest, most drawn-out sets of just, we're gonna make sure things are perfect. We're gonna cross our T's, dot our I's, and figure everything out. Styx Ferrymen find the freest pick on Itori. A BOGO deal, man. You don't get freer than that. He died for nothing. And what do? Do they fall back to an objective? No. Do they go and steal some camps? Absolutely not. They 3-man dive into the tier 1 tower, 1 by 1, and get absolutely owned, and then spend the entire time walking away, just walking away, while simultaneously getting owned still. It doesn't make any sense, man. They play it so slow for what is now a combined nearly 2 hours of in-game time, and then they do stuff like that. It is baffling me. I can't get a read on these guys. Grats to Niflheim Wargs, I suppose, for being able to punish the Fire Giant steal, but absolutely wild pacing.
Are you on Advil status, Miff? You need
I need something stronger. Ibuprofen.
Yeah, maybe. Well, look, the Wargs lose the Fire Giant after all of that drama. But they're able to deicide the Styx Ferrymen. But here's the problem, is you lose the Fire Giant, And so we're back to square one, where now you're just hoping your gold lead is good enough to fight into the towers, and it should be. It should be.
It is.
It should be.
It is.
Yeah, but you can't make definitive statements with a game like this that's been going on, Miff. You can't. You just can't. Nothing makes sense.
I can. I shouldn't. I can, though.
You can. You're allowed to, but you shouldn't. Tier 2 tower going to get sieged by the Wargs. Sarpeii sends out a little poke damage. He's not
so fast.
He's not hidden from anyone. He's got kin size, toxic blade.
I'm not walking into that. If I'm a big cat, this guy's looking real big right now. I'm getting out of there.
It's looking like a polar bear or something.
Good lord.
What is that skin? That is nuts, whatever it is. That is crazy. What is
Yo,
that?
this guy's looking different.
It's like a mechanical.
That's a Terminator, bro.
Right. It's like a mechanical warrior of some sort. A mechanical polar bear terrifies me. Somehow even scarier than a real one.
You gotta avoid Chuck E. Cheese. Like, you don't want to go anywhere.
Is there a polar bear in that ensemble?
I don't know.
No, it's a mouse.
I am a grown man.
There is a bear. The bear plays the piano or something.
You know that?
It's had a childhood, bro.
I guess so.
One of them. Anyway. The point is, Sarpeii has been an absolute menace this game. He's only died once. And the skin somehow makes it scary. I'm running away from that anyway. All right, so we go again here in a minute and a half. It looks like the Wargs, okay, that's without the passive on. That's a little less scary. I think the pure like silver luminescence was really freaking me out.
Yeah, I understand what I'm looking at now, which is a robot, whereas
Right.
previously it was some amalgamation and mass of energy in the form of man.
That's right. That's right. So Sarpeii is still scary as far as KDA goes, but a bit more manageable now. Let's see, the arms are getting back to it. At any rate, looks like in about a minute we're going to run it back here, Myth, because the Wargs are able to knock down a tower or two, expand that gold lead. Yes, you're 9,000 ahead. Yes, that gold lead should mean
It's huge. Look at the itemization on Styx Ferrymen. They are far removed from the strengths of Niflheim Wargs. You're just now finishing 4th item for Calvìn. You've already got 5 completed for Cozyx. Everybody else full 6 slotted. Only a couple of members of the Ferrymen approaching that point. StreakUp still waiting on that starter item. Relics for the most part, not exactly upgraded. Calvìn in particular, I think you really want to get that Heavenly up into like a Sprute territory. That would be massive, actually. The fact that it is a Tier 2 Heavenly right now is cause for questioning. But otherwise, I think the Niflheim Wargs just should be able to walk into this Fire Giant and force the fight. You're absolutely not. Look at me, Dave. You are absolutely not leaving this to coin toss situations anymore. We have been here for too long. We've seen it happen too many times.
On the
and
flip
your trap
side,
is bad for it.
yeah, but I think on the flip side, if you're the Styx Ferrymen, you're taking a coin toss
Every time.
every single time.
Every single time.
The Wargs have not been able to figure it out around the objectives here this set. Again, winner smacking into Hex Mambo tomorrow, a team that didn't even get to pull a Fire Giant today because their games were F6 before we got there. Double freeze from Calvìn. Good setup. BeAzrael stripping away some protections. Itori has gone in, and he's gone in alone. Luckily, some sustain keeps him alive, but it's Sarpeii, the machine in the back line, that burns through one, and I'm a monster up and over the wall. That's nice from iceice. Ends up being a 1-for-2 trade. Sarpeii too low to keep fighting. They'll go back to base and reset. Hawkk might as well. Wouldn't you guess it, not a clean enough fight to pull the FG.
You could reset and still pull fire here. 40 seconds synced up on Styx Ferrymen's backline. StreakUp and FrenchEmperor dead. I think the Niflheim Wargs have got phenomenal DPS. The only thing you're concerned about is steal. But with I'm a Monster off the table, the only steal is crush. And if you're in range to crush, you're in range to get crushed as well. Or maybe you just shut down Calvìn. It's worked 8 times before.
Worked 8 times in a row. Really, it's worked out for Sarpeii.
Good lord!
It'll work yet again. BeAzrael melted through. Yes, it's Hawkk that does the last bit of damage.
Does he have defense? He does. He bought it.
A little bit.
A little bit.
Not enough, apparently.
Clearly.
As now the Styx Ferrymen double back for the enhanced Fire Giant. iceice in lane, dealing with minions. All right, no one close by. And the Wargs, despite the Ferryman name being right above them, are able to get the enhanced Fire Giant. And now, Mifflin, now should feel confident enough to dive one of these Phoenixes.
Yeah, walk in, probably grab that tier 2 first. Wouldn't be surprised if the Oni Fury goes down before you approach a bird as well, but Siege certainly on the mind of the Niflheim Wargs. Fire Giant, so massive a power spike. Gold lead, ridiculous as well. You're in a phenomenal position, and you've got the composition for it as well. Cozyx and Spudio will make short work of any structure, space control by Hawkk, especially around Siege. That arcane stance from Merlin's so difficult to play around. Styx Ferrymen have got their work cut out for him from here. Maybe the ideal situation is you could catch Itori on some of these rotations. He's been leaping haphazardly. A leap into Gravity Surge, into Sikkim, Polynomicon, if you're able to finish it up, could just shut down this Nike regardless, especially with this Blink pickup too. If Calvin's on the ball, Nike doesn't get to play with their shield. Itori might be under the biggest risk of death here.
Itori's getting caught out in the last couple of fights on the right side of the map. Sarpeii finishes off mid lane tier 2. It's also Trebuchet working its way down the mid lane. Little damage. That's just one charge of the Rend that actually ticks away some from StreakUp there. Feel real nice if you get all those charges and the disarm. Over in mid, Sarpeii, quick work of this mid lane Phoenix, and tanks it up in the meantime, and maybe takes a 1v1 against FrenchEmperor, wins it. FrenchEmperor's got to back away after losing their mid lane Phoenix. Itori, you talked about maybe getting caught out. More just separates the fight now. Left and mid Phoenix gone.
FrenchEmperor waited until his Phoenix died to hit Sarpeii. Had he just hit him beforehand, there is a high likelihood that the Phoenix would have assisted him in that battle. That's the analysis. Do with it what you will.
Well, I can't do anything with it. I'm not sure FrenchEmperor's tuned in to the breakdown here. Probably unhappy with a couple of the things that have been said about shot calls. That's massive pull in from Hawkk. Real
Good
nice
Lord.
damage spike there. Opens the door for Itori to find the backline. Sunder does connect, so does Free, so does I'm a Monster, but all of that, and you've just
He's got to die.
not finished off Itori. The Styx Ferrymen have missed a kill onto the Nike, and now all 3 Phoenixes are gone. Maybe some mercy from the Niflheim Wargs here. Walking into the Titan room. Should have enough damage to get this one done. Some misplays across the board here in game 3, but ultimately the Wargs, the team with the goal difference, able to take game 3, and they'll move on to play Hex Mambo.
Sarpeii looks real good in this entire set, man. Lancelot had a couple of stumbles in the late game, but game 1, 10-1 on Thor. Game 3 ends it with only 1 death as well. Congratulations for your opportunity to step up against Hex Mambo. Dave, I am emotionally and mentally compromised.
In what way? What define
Emotionally
compromised for me?
and mentally.
Yeah, but
My mental is shattered.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Appreciate you writing it out for me there. Yeah, there were some interesting moments there. And look, this is now Wargs. If you want to punch up against Hex Mambo tomorrow, lots to clean up. You get the game 3 win. You avoid the loser side of this group. But Hex Mambo awaits after a game 3 win here from the Niflheim Wargs. They're able to close it out. Say what you will, but they close out things here in game number 3. That's it for Miff and I. We'll go back to the desk to break this down.
Yeah, thank you so much, David and Miv. Now, Charlie, I'm going to slightly self-promo myself here. At the top of my Twitter, @_JMaxHucker, there's a pinned tweet that says, NA can't secure objectives. And this was way back when I was casting the collegiate scene and the SCC way back when.
Right.
And that's because NA never could secure objectives. It's always coin toss stolen away. I think I just need to change that to nobody can secure objectives because, my goodness, 4 times this set alone, the Styx Ferrymen were able to take an objective from under the nose of the Niflheim Wargs. And unfortunately for them in this game, stealing a Fire Giant was enough because they were already pretty much on death's door at that point there. So if there's any props to Styx Ferrymen, they know how to take objectives. Well, Niflheim Wargs know how to take the team fights.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in this case, NA and the Wargs don't know how to confirm objectives, but I still think good gameplay throughout. I'm going to echo what Miff was saying about Sarpeii. I think a phenomenal set in its entirety for Sarpeii. Looked real good on pretty much every single one of those characters, as well as the duo lane from the Wargs. I don't know, I was just paying attention to the amount of lead they were having, the kills they were having, and then the objective play needs some work. You know, like that's the one thing I can say for the squad. They knew what to do. They knew how to get their leads. It was just fights around objectives seemed to crumble a bit, especially the confirmation. And to Hawk's credit, it's not easy to confirm as a Merlin. There's not too much burst damage you
True.
can go for. So if the Wargs are trying to draft comps like this consistently, maybe throw just a little bit more in there, you know, like a double bounce from Spudio, something, just saving for the end. It just seemed like they were just 50-50ing every single objective and had no problem doing it. But again, they got to late game, and they were able to close this one out.
Yeah, this Merlin able to do a lot of damage to the tanks, to these front line. This shred style of build worked out really well for him. Was great again, burning out objectives, just not quite the secure on there. Also, these Imo monsters from iceice, and I got to give them some credit to delaying the game a lot longer than it probably needed to go. You know, there's 3 versus just Hawk at Fire Giant. Hawk's able to solo kill, or not Hawk, iceice able to solo kill Hawk up in that matchup there. Iceice really keeping it alive for his squad there. And then obviously later on we had the Fire Giant steal that came from Styx Ferrymen. So good at least trying to hold out for a little while longer. Just fell apart a little bit when it came to these late game team fights, not really able to get that one all together. Calvìn fell really far behind that game, not able to quite get the itemization he needed to be tanky and relevant, and not the best showing from Calvìn, at least as far as the slash line was concerned. But early on we did see that he was outpacing Cozyx as far as farm was going through there. Cozyx falling a little bit behind in that regard there, but I think you're right to highlight, once it comes to these late games, Hawkk able to get that damage out there, Spudio top of the damage chart for his team as well.
Yeah, I just think it's very difficult to be a Ymir on a losing squad because your job is support in that case. When you are behind on a Phoenix, is to be the first line of defense. You're supposed to stand there and be the solo tank. And the rough thing about Ymir, especially when you're behind, is that means you're going to be the first one dead almost every single time. The rest of your team can escape, but you're going to have to be that last bastion of defense. So I don't think Calvìn hurting too much for that one. Really wasn't much you could do. Did good damage on the Ymir, especially for dying so many times. So, you know, decent gameplay throughout.
Hard to be a little freezy boy under all that fire
Oh, yeah.
that the Niflheim Wargs were throwing out. That means that they'll be moving on to face up against Hex Mambo as we can take a look at the bracket for this portion, at least for Group A. Hex Mambo and Niflheim Wargs will be your winner's side matchup. That'll be match 7 tomorrow, I believe, if I'm counting correctly. It means that should be our 3rd matchup of tomorrow, and then opening our day will be Personnel versus Styx Ferrymen, who are the loser onto that side. Loser of that match is done. They're going home. That's the end of their SEC championship run, at least for match 7. There's still at least a second chance for whoever does end up falling down. They'll then face the winner of that, as you can see the bracket. Then we'll move 2 teams on to the elimination stage qualifier out of this group. It'll be the exact same thing over in Group B, though, which we'll get to take a jump over towards there and take a look at what our next matchup will be. Our final match of the day, Aru Scorpions and Gilded Gladiators facing off there. And that, for those 2 teams, is your number 3 and your number 5 from EU, respectively, for the Scorpions and the Gladiators. Winner of that will face Highland Ravens. Loser goes down and faces the SOC team in Thunderhead for the last chance elimination match.
And you did all that in your head.
I am glad, Shirley, that there is not only a graphic in front of my face that helps me distinguish that, but that there is also extra information on these beautiful Alienware laptops that I'm able to access at any point. Lickety split. Not just because we have good internet, but because these laptops are also just so dang good.
Wow, this guy, he's quick, and he's got the quick maths, and it was correct. So, exciting matches to come tomorrow. But, of course, we still got one more today, as you were saying. So, it should be exciting. You know, another SEC versus SEC one. Can't wait to jump into it.